The meeting will come to order, and the members will please take their seats. We'll begin our meeting as we always do. If you could please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We have a number of matters to get through this evening. We will start and return to the debate under Article 11. We'll then proceed in accordance with the order set forth in the motion booklet through the remainder of the articles. We may, depending on the time, move the Personnel Board article forward if the meeting is so inclined at a certain time. If we do not complete our business this evening, we will return on Monday night at 7:30. After that, we'll return immediately following the Winchester-Woburn football game on Thanksgiving morning. So I'm hopeful that either tonight or Monday night we will be through. WinCam, Alan Iden, has asked those of you speaking from the audience if you could either use the microphones that are available at the end of the aisles or at the podium, or please wait for a hand microphone to come to you. It makes for much better production values. Before we get started, I'll appoint some tellers. Mrs. Quinn, if you could count your section and the Select Board. Ms. Tremarchi, if you could assist me by counting your section. Mr. Clemson, if you could count your section, please. Mr. Deering, if you could count your section, and the Finance Committee. If the tellers could please raise their right hand. Do you swear to provide this town meeting an accurate count of the vote and report the same to the chair? Thank you very much. This brings us to the continuation of the debate on Article 11. And our Chair Pro Tem for those purposes, Mr. Howley. Mr. Howley.
Thank you very much, I think. Okay, round two. So in case any of you dozed off as we were in the midst of our marathon session last Thursday, let me just sort of remind everybody where we are. So Article 11, if you need to be reminded, is a article to amend the zoning map of the town, and it has been brought by the Planning Board. Last I looked, it is still found on page 12 of your warrant, unless it has fled the premises. Article 11 was moved and seconded last Thursday, and after considerable discussion, town meeting voted to postpone Article 11 to a time certain, this being now. And so my goal is in an hour or less, have town meeting members feel as if you can make an informed decision on the disposition of Article 11. I'm hopeful that we can do that. I think we can. Given the potential impact of Article 11 on particular property owners in the neighborhood at large, the chair thought it important at the last meeting to hear from as many non-town meeting residents as we could. And I recognize that we did not hear from everyone. I recognize there are more people who would like to speak who are not town meeting members. It is my intention to recognize two non-town meeting members. And the reason I say that is that I want to bring the discussion back to all of you. I think it's time that we do that. So I intend to recognize two people who have asked me to speak. I'm also going to recognize a town meeting member who was prepared to make a presentation last time and was not able to. There may be a question or two that could be raised by by a particular town meeting member. We'll see if that happens. But when all that is done, then the floor will go back to you. I anticipate that there will be a motion to amend. I understand that it may or may not be the one that was on the table, so we'll have to hear about that. But after a few initial questions when it comes back to town meeting, I think it would make sense to hear that motion to amend, if it is being made, And that hopefully will set the table for a full discussion about the motion to amend, about the main motion, about any other motions that might be made. So that's my intention. So under the bylaws, our bylaws, a vote of the town meeting is required for non-town meeting members to address the meeting. And accordingly, it's moved and seconded that the chair be allowed to recognize non-members of the meeting to participate in the debate under Article 11. All in favor, say aye. All oppose? The ayes have it. Motion passes. So I think those people, the two who are going to speak, I think they understand the rules. You need to come down to the microphone or the podium. I'm going to try to be pretty strict about the 5-minute rule, and I think town meeting would certainly appreciate the brevity. Is Peggy Schleicher out there somewhere? Ms. Schleicher, if you could come down. Yeah. Ms. Schleicher, if you could just introduce yourself to everyone.
Good evening, Mr. Moderator, Town Manager, Select Board, Planning Board, and Town Meeting members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My name is Peggy Schleicher. I served in Town Meeting for Precinct 8 more than 25 years, and my father also served with me. As I was listening to your conversation last Thursday, what I thought was lacking from the discussion was some appreciation of the history of the North End, particularly its zoning history. So I said to myself, what I think I will do is contribute my age and my classification as a senior citizen to tonight's discussion. As I said, I've learned my experience with zoning was through my work in town meeting and various committees in the North End, particularly the North End Task Force. I have an appreciation, having lived in Winchester more than 68 years, of its industrial past, particularly the Beggs and Cobb's Tannery that was on Swanton Street, the felt mill that was on Canal Street, the Badakian rug cleaning facility that was over my end of town. But historically, the properties stretching approximately 150 feet along either side of Main Street were zoned as either commercial or industrial. And then between about 1973 and 2000, the area was incrementally rezoned to reflect a decision to promote non-industrial and residential uses. Another impetus for change was the abandonment of the railroad right-of-way that was also signaled the rebirth and the rezoning along North Main Street, and thus the creation of the GBD 2 and 3 zones, what I like to refer to as the marriage of commercial and residential zoning along North Main Street. A lot of work went into that rezoning by residents, particularly the North End Task Force, and town officials, and it has been good, but not a perfect rezoning plan. What the new zoning achieved was it halted and prohibited further automotive uses. It halted the construction of fast food drive-through uses. At that time, Burger King had just opened, and McDonald's was on the prowl. It shifted some of the industrial parcels into the GBD, which, by the way, could be considered down zoning, and also helped us create Bellino Park, an area I'm particularly proud of, as it recognized Joe Bellino, a Heisman Trophy winner, a resident of the North End, and a Winchester High School graduate, class of 1956. The new zoning also imposed a shallow minimum front setback for planting and increasing the green. The bottom line was that the rezoning resulted in a huge victory for the North End and the Planning Board. But there is some unfinished business, and that is before you in Article 11. It's been a long journey, but we have one more step to complete before the vision for North Main Street is complete. So Article 11 has put forward to align the actual property lines with proper zoning districts as they were intended. That was the intention of Article way back when we zoned in 2000. This was not done in the earlier effort, as a simpler 150-foot boundary from Main Street was used at that time, because at that time we did have a GBD, but it was 150 feet. The time has come to take care of that unfinished business and align the zones with the actual property lines. We need to keep moving forward with the North End plan. I urge you to do that and not allow ourselves to fall backwards and be distracted. I ask you, what is the purpose of zoning? And the purpose of zoning is to prevent new development from interfering with existing uses and to preserve the character of the community. I argue that the main character of the North End is residential, with complementary GBD2 and 3 along Main Street. Now, it may interest you to know that off of Main Street, right beyond the GBD, there are approximately 325 houses or housing units in the residential RG 6.5. And that's what I'm most concerned about, is protecting those properties, protecting the residential character of the Main Street area. That is its highest and best use. But you must recognize zoning is always work in progress. It's not perfect. The town zoning has changed, and a lot of it has been in the North End. What's important to consider tonight is to protect the residential neighborhood that abuts the GBD2 and 3, to protect the residents and the desirability of their homes and their investment. We've heard a lot from those seeking to use a few properties on the side residential streets abutting Main Street as investment opportunities through redevelopment. My concern is for the welfare of the greater number of residents who live on those streets, those 325 housing units that I've talked about. I'm asking town meeting to do the following. One, I urge you, please protect the residential properties that desperately need protection from the unnecessary intrusion of commercial overdevelopment, or what I call commercial creeping. I have grown up in the North End, and I am very familiar with those streets. I grew up on Upland Road, and I now live on Lockwant Street. So I've lived all of my 60-plus years in the North End. The vision has always been to protect the North End residential property and streets as a priority, not the commercial development on them. That was stated in the Triangle Master Plan, the North End Task Force work, as well as the master plan as we know it right now. So I think many of you are familiar with the streets. I'm not going to recite them. If you need me to do so, I'm glad to do so. But another point I want you to remember is that the North End, particularly Precinct 8, is already fragile and congested. The GBD 3-story, 45 feet height is very different and more overwhelming than the RG 6.5, which is 2.5
Ms.
stories.
Schleicher, you've reached your 5 minutes. I'll give you a little more time, but I'd like you to wrap it up if you could.
Yes, was that the senior citizen special? Failing to do this is failing to properly protect the residential neighborhood. Put the 325 residential properties at risk in your mind's eye and seek to protect them. I urge you, please, to vote to protect the North End, particularly those properties that I talked to, and take the next step that we all started in 2000 when we did the original GBD2, GBD3 zoning. And let's move forward and let's achieve that vision that we had for the North End. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Schleicher. Mr. Corsetti, are you out there? Oh, you're here. Okay. And if you could identify yourself, sir, for everybody, your address and name.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dominic Corsetti. I'm the owner of 12 Richardson. I work for the Postal Service, as you can plainly see. I've been with the company for 30 years. I have a wife, 2 children that grew up in the town, born and raised here, and graduated. Let me say this. The town of Winchester, you people here, town members, have always done things by the book. You've crossed the T's, dot the I's. You've done study after study after study. And you've always come up with a formal decision and presented to you people here, and you made the right choice along the way. In this situation here, in just this particular article, for the 30-plus years that we've been in this town, there's always been a study. There is a study going on now. It's called what you call the master plan. Somehow or another, this Article 11 came into being within the last 90 days. But the study's not done yet. So we don't know what the benefits to, for, or against are. My concern is, and probably some of the people in here concern is, that let us finish what you started. we're paying money for a study that's not even completed yet, and you want to rush this through. Yes, there's going to be some for and against. And I've talked to a few of the neighbors on Salem Street about their concern, about that building at 840 Main Street, 850, whatever the address is. Okay? Yes, it's an eyesore, but it had nothing to do with that. None of us did. It's just the way it happens. Times are changing, and we have to change according to the town. The beauty of this is that you get to decide what goes on, what's best for our town. I thank the Select Board, I thank the Planning Board for all the work that they've done to see what's best interest for our town. But just in this particular moment, this particular article, I don't agree with. I'm sorry, I just can't go with this. I got to speak from my heart. I'm a little bit nervous here. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's been a lot of emails going out around here, and the Postal Service is not getting any dime or whatever with it. There's a lot of money out there. As you've heard, we're already in billions of dollars in debt, but that's besides the point. If I had the time, I would send each and every one of you a regular letter that you open up and read instead of emails. We've become a technology society. But this is good what you have here. Do not let this go. This is what makes our town, Winchester, unique. Okay? We cannot be compared to Arlington, Weston, Lincoln. We are Winchester. We do things the way we wanted to. There are a few parcels here that are in question of this. Yes, there are. Some, all set. We do need more commercial. We all know that. As you heard from the Select Board last week, our taxes are going to be going up, or they're going to make that proposal for our taxes to go up. It's always going to be on our shoulders to promote and get this. But all I'm asking is, do the right thing. Let's hear what the study has to say about the North End. Yes, I've heard from the previous speaker that it's been done time and time again. Times are changing. If anybody knows about change, especially in my work, the work we do, we don't get first-class meal like we used to. And I bet you most of the people in here pay your bills online because it's much easier. You know, God forbid something happens that, technology is wiped out, then what are you going to do? But that's here or there, and I want to get off the beaten path here. So all we're asking you is to consider postponing it or let the study go through. Let's see what the results are. But this particular article, the way it was formatted within 90 days, and a study was done, or a survey was sent out, about 1,000 people, which was said last week. Really? Honestly? I mean, if this were to pass, I'm afraid it will open up an avenue for other things to happen. Not just in our section, the whole town. You got to think, it affects us now because we're involved with it. But if you think it doesn't affect you, think again. World's changing. And again, I thank you for your time, and I wish everyone here a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Corsetti. I'm going to recognize one more person and throw it open for all of you. Mr. Lynn, I think you had asked me to speak.
So fellow Winchester Town Meeting members, Select Board members, Planning Board members, and the Finance Committee members. Thanks for opportunity for me to speak today. So I'm Hank Lin, Precinct 8 member. So I'm a parent of 2 school-age children currently attending McCall. and Lynch. So we came to Winchester 8 years ago and found 17 canal to call our home. As shown on the slide, those two photos on the right. So that's in front of my house. In the morning, school kids going to school. Then in the afternoon, you can see parallel parking on the street. So as a toxicologist, I make a living protecting people from exposure to harmful drugs that are regulated by the FDA. So bearing the same spirit in mind, I now stand before you to protect my fellow neighbors and our identity as a Winchester community. Local zoning bylaw governed by Massachusetts Zoning Act is created to promote general welfare of the town of Winchester. So the purpose of zoning bylaw is to protect the health and safety of its inhabitants, to encourage the most appropriate use of the land throughout the town, and to increase the amenities of the town. So the controversial 150-feet business bell rule was long adopted prior to 1973, as you can see on the map. Coexisted with Salem, Richardson Water, Canal, Runford, and Farrell as a residential neighborhood. And the Urban Loop Railroad. However, the loop was abandoned in 1982, and the railroad was removed. So 150-feet rule was also adopted for Swanton Street. So though it has shown zoning changes on 83 and 87 zoning maps, many parcels on Swanton were rezoned residential, as you can see in a circle. And few parcels on Main Street also rezoned as CI. So if our town decided zoning change for Swanton 30 years ago, can we ask ourselves as town of Winchester in the 21st century, why we still let obsolete 150-feet rule dictate what we do, instead of seeking what is the best for our town, welfare and safety of its residents? Similarly, on North Main parcels, namely 911 Water and 15 Water and 10 Canal, under the same 150 rule, were also rezoned residential prior to 2000, precisely the spirit of zoning bylaws. So we can justify the current proposed zoning change using the same reason to protect the integrity, character, and the safety of the neighborhood. Here is a simple math question. Is 1 + 1 equals 2? I believe my son at Lynch would do well. So the answer is no. Under 150-fifth rule, look at examples here. 1 Main Street and Side Street parcel are bundled, 1 + 1. The current zoning allows a structure built close to the property boundary, with a silver parcel providing setback buffer to zone boundary. So 844 Main is being built this way, with 10 feet setback front, no side setback to neighbors, as you can see on the right. See that 844 out of scale? And 15 feet setback to zone boundary. So clearly, the answer for 1 + 1 is more than 2 by bundling parcels. So a quick screenshot for how many 1 + 1 more than 2 bundling opportunities are North Main now. My fellow town meeting members, can you imagine what would be like if those potential sites all have similar structure like Main 844? So this is going to be a drastic impact to the residential neighborhood for many, many years to come. Home and the neighborhood are central components of our identity and value. These characteristics are non-monetizable. For our town of Winchester and our way of life cannot be defined by a price tag. Thus, the zoning bylaw is provided as form of protection. So our current neighborhood should not be bound by preferences of past generations. The obsolete 150-feet rule adopted more than 45 years ago must to go. So zoning should accommodate changes over time and should be used as a most effective safeguard for the interests of current and future neighborhood residents. So I urge you to vote yes on Article 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lin.
By the way, that's a structure look like. If we have any, so it's like that.
Thank you very much. Further on the question, I would suggest, I don't know if that motion to amend is going to be made or not, but it can be made when the proponents would like to, but it might be an opportune time to do that, with the thought being that all the matters, at least as I understand them, will be in front of the town meeting. Mr. Betancourt. You're done. Have a seat.
I might take that, thanks.
We got to make up time somewhere.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Town Meeting. I join Mr. Conti in offering the amendment before you, and that is to amend Article 11 to delete the 9 parcels listed as GBD 2 and 3 and being downzoned to RG. Those are Canal Street number 11, Clark Street 1517, Clark Street 1820, Glenwood Avenue 6, Richardson Street 68, Richardson Street 911, Water Street 8, Watson Place 2, and Watson Place 6. The amendment serves to separate the necessary cleanup work of the slivers as presented in the first part of the motion and the downzoning of the 9 parcels which would be disproportionately affected. Because of the severe impact on these several residents without due process, we feel it makes sense to consider alternative options. In support of the amendment, I'd like to acknowledge the good work of the Planning Board on proposing Article 11. Their job is nearly an impossible one, to respond in real time with zoning solutions to out-of-scale developments from developers who have a long head start and infinite resources. But fixing bad zoning with more bad zoning is not the answer either. When we look at maps and parcels on the giant screen behind us, sometimes it is easy to forget that those parcels represent real people and real families in real homes. Whether they have lived here for 5 minutes or 5 generations, their voice is as important one, and we should be heard. We can't effectively protect neighborhoods without listening to all of our neighbors. Here, I believe the process was both too brisk and too blunt. The downzone property owners had only a couple of weeks to understand and to react to the proposed zoning changes, which became effective immediately. Typically, these changes happen over many months, if not years. And when I say process, I don't mean going through the motions. I mean the real work of local government, listening, compromising, and working to find solutions together. With added deliberation, I think we would have had several less intrusive and more productive options to protect the neighborhood and all neighborhoods throughout town from large, undesirable development. We could change dimensional requirements, increase setbacks, trigger special permit and design review. Applying these changes uniformly across town will help us stop the cycle of chasing developers and evoke the real planning efforts necessary to preserve our neighborhoods. Because of the limited reaction time we had to respond to the proposed project at 11 Canal Street and the adjacent property, we ran towards an option that was zero-sum. Protect some neighbors by hurting others. Certainly there will be time when that is absolutely necessary, but this is not one of them. Between now and spring town meeting, the Select Board is committed to working with the Planning Board to find solutions to out-of-scale development and will provide resources wherever necessary. And to be clear, this is an issue of traffic and safety. No piece of the article addresses that. There are no children that are at risk by these zoning changes. But the Select Board will ask the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Committee to add heightened visibility and review to this neighborhood. In recent years, we have been the target of massive gentrification. We have discussed how this community has become an economically gated one, and our affordable housing options continue to tilt in the wrong direction. But what we often don't realize is that for many in our community, their home is their most prized and valuable asset. For many, they have planned their retirement or children's higher education on the value of these properties and continue to invest in our community. And while I realize zoning must change, I believe it must be done incrementally with citizen engagement and not done overnight. If you look at Article 15 and 16, you'll see that we continue to be exposed to unplanned 40B developments when we leave property owners no other options. It's not a great outcome for the town. And finally, if we endeavor to build a caring and connected community, we must be able to cross the street and speak with our neighbors and pursue common solutions. It is not productive and certainly not progressive to attack our neighbors and instill fear to reach a desired outcome, or to go on Facebook or social media and publicly shame people into agreement. Our job as elected members of the community is to represent all members and all residents of the community to improve the lives of everyone to the best of our ability. In the words of the late Senator Wellstone from Minnesota, and this was mine, not Mr. Conti, I don't know if you'd want me to be quoting Paul Wellstone, but politics is about the improvement of people's lives and lessening human suffering. I think that's right. And I think Article 11, while certainly well-intentioned, falls short of that second goal. Thank you.
So a motion to amend has been made. I'd like to read the motion identifying the particular parcels for town meeting members, and I'm going to ask for a second if there is one. So as I understand it, the motion to amend is to amend Article 11 as printed in the warrant by deleting the parcels listed in the article, which are currently zoned exclusively as either GBD2 or GBD3. And I'd like to identify those parcels for you. Those of you with motion books, if you want, you can note them yourself. That would be Canal Street. I'm just going to read the addresses. Canal Street 11, Clark Street 15 through 17, Clark Street 18 through 20, Glenwood Ave 9 through 11, Richardson Street 6 through 8, Richardson 9 through 11, Water Street 8, 14 through 46, Watson Place 2, and Watson Place 6. Is there a second for that motion? Second. It's been seconded. Further on the motion. Mr. Diab, come on up. Mr. Jurius.
Do you want to hear from the boards first?
You raise your hand. I'm happy to recognize you. I think you're speaking as a town meeting member.
Right, I think the board should probably.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you, Lance. Okay. The select board has something to say?
Buried down in the front. Mr. Moderator, ladies and gentlemen, the select board, majority of the select board recommends against this amendment. The vote was 3 against and 2 in favor, so the majority is against it. We recommend that you vote no. We recognize that Article 11 is imperfect. We've heard excellent reasons why it should be changed, both for the protection of the neighborhood and for the protection of individual property rights. And we are sympathetic with both of those arguments. And we would again go back to the comment we made earlier, which is we believe the planning board and the neighborhood should return almost immediately to look at a much more fine-grained rezoning of this district and solve some of these problems that are arisen today. However, that said, we believe the amendment makes the problem worse. It effectively would divide the neighborhood against itself, providing relief for half of the neighborhood and leaving the other half unprotected from development. Beyond that, it leaves the window open, for better or for worse, for more development under the current zoning rules, and we would get large projects which are not tailored effectively to fit into the neighborhood, and that's an impact we don't want. Most economic studies will show you that somewhere in the range of 20 or 30% of the value of your property is tied up in the look and feel of the neighborhood in which you are part. So if you get a mishmash neighborhood, the value of your property is dropping, and that is what is likely to happen if we have undirected, uncontrolled development along Main Street in these parcels. Again, I don't think that Article 11 is perfect, but it's a step to move us forward, and then we have to go the piece there. Effectively, what you're being asked for on this amendment and asked again to vote on Article 11 is a value choice. Your choice is to value, on one hand, real estate speculation. Perfectly good, we want some of these areas to be developed, but your choice is, in the short term, do I value advantaging real estate speculators, or do I value the neighborhood? And I think as on our general discussion in Chapter 11 and on our discussion of this amendment, it is the Select Board's strong recommendation that we vote for our neighbors first and the real estate development second. So thank you very much.
Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation?
So since this wasn't put forth earlier, we didn't actually get a chance to vote this. We did discuss that if changes were made to the article, that we still felt that there were so many competing impacts, financial, that it was hard to determine what the clear impact would be one way or another. So we did not vote a decision.
Thank you, sir. Does the Planning Board have a recommendation?
Thank you. Maureen Meister from the Planning Board. We did, four of us, and I should add just four of us, did reconsider this with this amendment, anticipating it would come forward. An additional development has been that we also have had before us already at our meeting on Tuesday night, a kind of filing of a kind of plan that locks in zoning for 3 years. It's the use component of the zoning. I'd really love to show you that. Could I just ask Brian if he could tee up, I know we've got it, what the table of uses does in the zoning bylaw. Can you bring that forward?
If that can happen very quickly?
Well, why don't you work on it while I move
But
over?
otherwise, Maureen, I think town meeting is capable of understanding what you're
Okay.
talking about.
So the zoning, okay, here we go. The zoning bylaw, the very basis and very earliest aspects of zoning involves dimensions and uses. And then there's a whole lot of other stuff that's in words. But these tables are critical to understanding what would happen if this is passing. So if this amendment were to pass, in other words, that we pull out some of these particular parcels, the filing that took place already November 1st for one of those parcels then was followed today by filing of another one. But we still have a number of these parcels in that are now subject to the vote this evening at town meeting. This creates a sense of urgency. There really is a sense of urgency about the potential for development, and I assure you, people are interested in redeveloping. It's going on now. We see it on Main Street. And so if it freezes the uses, then what we have are the apartment use will be retained, the mixed use, which means commercial first floor, and then second floor, third floor, those will all be retained. And no matter what happens, if we come back at Springtown meeting with a dialogue and assuming town meeting passes this with a 2/3 vote in the spring, still, we expect that the rest of the parcels, the ones that have just been mentioned, will have this this plan filed with legal ages filed, let's keep it simple, and that the uses will be frozen, and that it's frozen for 3 years. So this is a really serious impact. And then all of this it's not every residence on the street, but these are right at the corners, the gateways, if you will, to each one of these neighborhoods where a very large-scale building could still go forward. Now, again, we could come back in the spring, we could gamble, we could risk and hope a 2/3 vote would come forward to pull down the dimensions, but the uses will be locked in. Apartment and mixed use, meaning commercial on the first floor, and then 2 more floors of residential. So this is something that we're responding to because, as the chairman of the select board said, we're highly concerned about retaining the integrity of streets that have long been residential and we believe have a great value to our community. So thank you very
And the planning
much.
board's recommendation, once again?
It was a unanimous of the 4 participating members unfavorable action on this amendment. Okay.
Thank you very much. Further on the question? That was on the amendment.
Can you make sure they understand?
Yeah. They voted, the planning board, as I understand it, voted unanimously, that is 4-0, against the motion to amend. Okay? Mr. Jurius.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, fellow Winchester Town Meeting members and residents. My name is Jurius. I am a town meeting member from Precinct 8, and by now all of you know that I live at 26 Canal Street, one block off of Main Street, and I've been there for approximately 20 years. Unfortunately, I will repeat some of the words that have come before, and I apologize, but here we go. Article 11 involves the rezoning of properties on side streets of Main Street, north of Skillings Road. I urge you to vote for it. First, I would like to talk about everyone's least favorite subject, and that is zoning. What is zoning, and why is there zoning? Zoning is a means for a community to ensure that development of land reflects the community's values and needs. It exists because over time, society has recognized that certain types of development are beneficial and others are detrimental. Sometimes there are community concerns that need to be addressed, such as increasing tax revenues or preserving natural resources. It is there because property owners and neighbors don't necessarily see eye to eye about what is appropriate, and a standard set of rules makes it easier for us to get along. Zoning is not static. Just as our society and economy changes, so does and so should zoning. What was appropriate 75, 50, even 20 years ago is not necessarily appropriate now. The area around North Main Street used to be heavily industrialized with multiple factories and worker housing. The factories are gone and it is now primarily residential. And zoning has changed to reflect that. What was once industrial is now mixed use or even residential. As Ms. Schleicher pointed out, between 1973 and 2000, significant sections of Main Street and Swanton Street were rezoned from light industrial and commercial to residential to reflect and to protect their residential character. Zoning is always a balancing act between the needs of property owners and the needs of the community. It should always reflect the values of the community as represented by you, town meeting members. So what is before you this evening is essentially a test of those values. At the heart of Article 11 is the intent to maintain the residential character of the neighborhoods off of North Main Street by permanently protecting several key gateway properties as residential. Now, there are 39 lots in the articles before you. I'm not going to go through my description of them all. A good chunk of them are there so that we can align zoning boundaries with lot lines and provide protection to the residential lots, because otherwise they would be vulnerable to very narrow setbacks. There are also 2 lots on Watson Place, which are zoned GBD3, and are on a side street to a side street of Main Street in a residential zone. Why they're GBD3 is a mystery, but they should probably all be zoned residential. I hope you'll agree with that. What remains are 7 lots, which are currently zoned GBD2 and GBD3. And why are they in this article? They're here because they are the very first lot off of Main Street on their side streets. They are the gateways to those neighborhoods. Currently, they can be redeveloped at the same scale and setbacks as properties on Main Street. Imagine seeing a building 45 feet high, just 15 feet off the road on your side street. That's what the threat is to these neighborhoods. These properties are indisputably residential. They have been in residential use for between 90 and 138 years. All but one of these lots retains the original residential structure, and the one from 1880 is still there. They've been part of these neighborhoods on these side streets for longer than most of us have been alive. These are residential neighborhoods. These lots are not on Main Street, and they should not be developed as if they were. And this is where zoning comes in. What value should the town put on these lots? If this town meeting agrees that these lots are residential, that they are fundamentally part of their neighborhood, then it should rezone them as such and do it now. It should recognize, just as did town meeting late last century, with the other, that with the other residential lots on Main and Swanton Street, that they should be protected as residential. If this meeting does not rezone these parcels tonight, if we wait, as some have said, for the town master plan to be completed and further economic studies to be done, we have de facto given our consent to their development. We know exactly what is happening on Main Street, on North Main Street, and the type of development we will get. It's happening where the former Scruples Salon is. That's exactly what we'll see wrapped around the corners, invading our side streets.
Mr. Jurius, your 5 minutes is up.
May I have 30 more seconds?
Proceed.
1 minute.
Could you do me a favor? The chair's allowing a lot of latitude in terms of the discussion. That you can speak about the main motion in order, in fact, to speak about the amendment. But if you could occasionally refer to the amendment that's before us, that would be helpful.
Okay, well, yes. Well, my key point is about these 9 properties which this amendment would remove from the article. These are the gateway properties. What I want to point out is this isn't a wait and see or wait and study question. There's no way to kick the can down the road and leave the responsibility of this decision to another town meeting 5 or 6 years from now. And I say 5 or 6 because that's how long it takes to go from the master plan, which is done in 2020, to final zoning. It took us 6 years to go from the economic surveys to the zoning of the central business district. Main Street is another large commercial zone. It will take that much time. So let's be clear about what it means if town meeting does not rezone these. It means that you do not believe that their value is in their residential nature, or that they provide a buffer to the neighborhoods, or that they are part and parcel. It means that you have no problem with building Main Street scale properties along a residential street. This gets back down to values. And what is before you this evening is essentially a test of those values. I hope that you value these neighborhoods as much as I do, and you vote no on this amendment and vote yes on Article 11. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the motion to amend Article 11 by deleting those parcels which are zoned exclusively GBD 2 and 3. Mr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I want to make a few points. Number one, as the majority of the Board of Selectmen told us, acknowledged, that Article 11 is not perfect. It's far from perfect. Many of us believe that it really amounts to spot zoning in view of the way that lots that are, frankly, some of them are in commercial use. For example, the 4 Hill Street, also known as 171 Swanton Street, is occupied by a landscaping business, yet it happens to be in a split zone, and what we would be doing is making that a non-conforming use. I find that to be an example of spot zoning. And we were also told that this is a choice between protecting the neighborhood and real estate speculation. Well, you know, frankly, the vast majority of the lots in question here have been owned by Winchester residents who've lived in this community many, many years, some all their lives. And we're destroying the value of their property, or by downzoning, we're reducing the value of their property. People have a right to the expectations that they have received when the property was zoned what it is, and the fact that we're cavalierly saying that because we think that it would be better served in a different zone, that we can just write off their property values. One of the parcels that was omitted, perhaps accidentally by my co-maker, Mr. Betancourt, was owned by a longtime resident, Mr. Corsetti, who spoke to us earlier, whose property is the tract number 14-18 on 12 Richardson Street, which was somehow left out of the list that was given to us, and should be included. Frankly, I would ask that we include that property. Mr. Corsetti had reasonable expectations of the value of his property. We're going to be cavalierly take that away from him. You know, people have a right to the reasonable expectations of the value of their property when they acquire it, and to cavalierly say we're going to change things for what? Most of these lots are pretty small lots that are not going to be suitable for development into these fearsome major developments that people are pointing out unless they can be combined together with several other lots. So I think that people have been unnecessarily scared by the threat of something like 944 Main Street happening on every corner. That's not going to happen. It hasn't happened. These properties have been zoned commercial for many, many years, and without any great development demand on these properties. So to say that, as some have made, that we're faced with some kind of a crisis here is wrong. And the fact that once we downzone these properties, if they are all downzoned to a residential zoning, they're never going to be changed back. We won't have the opportunity, because it's very difficult to change zoning to make amends for if we later determine that these actions were inappropriate. So I ask that, first of all, that the track number 14-18 on Richardson Street be included in this amendment.
Mr. Conti, could I ask you a question about that? As on my list, 14-18, Richardson Street 12, is a mixed parcel. It's both commercial and residential. The motion that was made, that you had made, in fact, focused on 9 parcels which are exclusively commercial.
Well, that is what was presented. However, that was not the motion that I had sent to you earlier. If you will take a look at what
we had that discussion, right? But in any event, if you want to amend it, I just want to point out to town meeting members, and maybe I can get some advice from council with regards to exactly how we do that. It's a motion to amend the motion that's currently on the floor.
I take it that Mr. Conti, good evening, Art Krieger, Town Council. I take it Mr. Conti is moving to amend the proposed amendment to add a 10th parcel that would be deleted from Article 11.
Correct.
And that's the Richardson Street parcel that you mentioned, that Mr. Corsetti's parcel.
Yeah, 14-18.
So that motion-
And the order in which, pardon me for doing this in front of all of you, the order in which we would proceed would be the amendment to the motion to amend.
Right. First town meeting
Okay.
should decide whether to add that 10th parcel or not.
Yes.
Then back to the original amendment, which is whether to delete the whole group, whether it's 9 or 10, or not delete it, and then Article 11 itself.
Okay. Yes, sir.
If the maker of the motion agrees with the amendment, can it just be part of the motion?
The motion to amend was already made, and that shouldn't be confused. If the maker of the original motion wants to rise in support of the Second Amendment and make it clear that, not that Second Amendment, this Second Amendment. That would be the way to do it.
What's that? The motion, as I understand it, unless I'm further corrected, the motion that is now before you is a motion to amend the previous motion to amend by adding Richardson Street 12, parcel ID 1418, to the list of deleted properties. Is there a second? Further on that motion to amend, the motion to amend. Yes. Go ahead, Arch.
The amendment that was on the table in the
It's
room
no longer in play.
is no longer in play? So
No.
is there a revised amendment sheet showing us
Just the
all-
one that was verbally
Just
offered
the
to
verbal
the,
one?
yeah,
Okay.
to the
Thank you
town
for
meeting.
clarification.
Yes.
I hate to say this, but I thought there were only 8 that you added, and now we're saying there are 10. I'm completely confused. Are
Yeah.
there 8, 9, or 10
So the
properties
original,
we're talking
if-
about?
I'll take another stab at this. The original motion to amend proposed to delete certain parcels from Article 11, which in fact are exclusively zoned currently as either GBD2 or GBD3. And that consisted of 9 parcels. You can look at your list and see what they are. That motion, there's now a motion to further amend the motion to amend by adding a 10th parcel, that parcel being Richardson Street 12 on your list, parcels 14 to 18. And that is now, the amendment motion to the amendment is now before us, unless I messed that up. Yeah. So back to Mr. McIntyre's question and anybody else's. I think we stated this in the beginning, but the handout that was on the table back there is no longer operative. It's only the thing that we have been describing here verbally that was made by Mr. Betancourt. Do you want to? Okay, sure. And then if you're ready, I think we're all ready to consider this. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Just to clarify on the amendment by Mr. Conti, I think that we felt that we would be subject to some spot zoning concerns if we added some arbitrary parcels. So we looked at we were carving out a class of parcels, those that are listed as GBD2 or GBD3 and are being downzoned or rezoned to RG. So adding another parcel, I think, may seem arbitrary and may subject the article itself and the action to a spot zoning analysis, which it wouldn't with the one as we proposed earlier of the 9 parcels that I listed earlier.
Yes, sir.
John Lowy, Precinct 1. Mr. Moderator, through you to the Town Council, I heard for the amendment there was a 3-2 vote. Would somebody in the minority view be willing to give some points to consider is one of my questions. And the second point I would make is from the newspapers this week there was some article around or some point made about something about not having I'm sorry, I'm just not thinking through this well. The point was about conflict of interest. I heard something in the newspaper, and could somebody speak to that as well?
Point of order? Yes, ma'am.
With all due respect to the town meeting member, I think we're still handling the amendment to the amendment.
But that's going to help me with the amendment, because you see, I'm seeing this amendment as part of a compromise for what was the original piece, and when I'm listening to the 3-2 vote, there seems to be a minority that's not a, it's a substantial
I think we can address
minority.
your question on the 3-2 vote.
Yes.
And why don't you come back later? It perhaps would be in order later as we have our full discussion.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Samantha Allison, Precinct 3. Regarding the amendment to amend, through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Conti, I'm curious what is unique about parcel 14-18, because that is currently RG and GBD2, as are many of the other parcels on this list. So I don't understand. I get the other 9, the GBD 3 and 2, and considering excluding them, but I don't understand what's unique about 12 Richardson Street, that it would be added to the 9
The
parcels.
town meeting member asks Mr. Conti what is unique about parcel Richardson Street 12, which in fact is a parcel that has both RG and GBD2 zoning. Could you get a microphone? Thank you.
It may not be unique, but I'm seeking to protect the reasonable investment expectations of a Winchester resident, frankly. And that's something I think that we should all be concerned about. We all own property. If the planning board can do this to this gentleman and many others on North Main Street, it can do it to any of us. So I would ask that we give some respect to people's investment expectations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The question by the prior town meeting member was, as I understand it, the select board voted 3-2 against the motion to amend. And all right. Yeah, okay. I'm being coached. So we're going back. Let's reset. The motion that is before you is the motion to amend, the original motion to amend, by adding Richardson Street 12 to that list of deleted properties. The question has been raised again with regards to spot zoning and whether this, in fact, creates a risk of exposing it to spot zoning claim.
Good evening. The 9 parcels that are the subject of the first motion to amend, as you heard, are all similarly zoned. They are all GBD 2 or 3 completely, and they would all be zoned to RG. That's the unifying principle of those 9. Taking fewer than those 9 or adding to those 9 raises a possibility that it would be viewed as arbitrary, either by the Attorney General in the approval process or by the courts if anyone were to challenge the zoning as spot zoning. I don't know enough about the parcels. We certainly haven't heard enough about the parcels tonight to opine definitively. I can't tell you that it would be considered spot zoning. But the more you deviate from the 9 by adding other parcels that are differently zoned just because somebody spoke about his property, or taking only some of the 9 because the owners were for or against, now you're getting away from a consistent unifying theme. And the more you do that, the more arbitrary it is. So I can't tell you that a 10th parcel will invalidate it, but each one you add or subtract from the 9 raises the likelihood to me that it would be struck down.
Okay, I think we're ready for the question. The question before town meeting on the motion to amend, the original motion to amend, by adding Richardson Street 12, parcel 14 to 18, to the list of deleted parcels. This is a majority vote, and if you could please, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed? No. Okay. The motion to amend fails. We now move to the motion to amend, that motion being to amend Article 11 by deleting those parcels which are currently exclusively zoned either GBD 2 or GBD 3. This is also, yes, sir.
Mike Galvin, Precinct 2.
Could you, I'm sorry, could you repeat your name a little bit?
Mike Galvin, Precinct 2.
Thank you.
It seems to me with this amendment, it removes these full parcels, but on the fear of the one use, the apartments, is not addressed. And I was wondering, is there a way in this motion, in the amendment, that we could also do something like restrict height or require design review?
Subject to anything town council might say, I would say no, that would be beyond the scope of this, but please go ahead. I was right on that one.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so the motion to amend is Article 11 by deleting, yes, sir, sorry. Almost.
Sorry. I feel like I'm in zoning inception right now. Nick Bogovich, town meeting member, Precinct 8. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you again regarding this motion to amend. If one takes issue with the process that led us to Article 11 as a whole, then you can imagine how one might be outright offended by the lack of thoughtfulness that went into this motion to amend. I agree with Mr. Grenzbeck and the majority of the Select Board that such a motion would undermine the efforts of Article 11. And I'd like to call your attention to 3 key talking points with regards to the motion to amend. Number 1, Article 11 as a whole, as it exists, written before you without the motion to amend, is not a knee-jerk reaction. It is well thought out. At the last session of town meeting, we discussed 844 Main Street, which is the result of what happens when developers exploit our current zoning along the North Main Street corridor. choosing profit over prudence. With our current North Main Street corridor zoning, the opportunity exists for 9 more 844 Main Streets to be built, not along Main Street, but on properties that do not abut Main Street, on properties within a flourishing residential neighborhood. Now, why is this a problem? 844 Main Street is zoned GBD with commercial on the first floor and commercial use downstairs and 4 residential condos above in a structure 45 feet tall. Such a structure on our narrow streets like Clark, Richardson, Water, and Canal would result in increased traffic, leading to increased risk in child safety for many children who play outside. I disagree with Mr. Corsetti. You don't need expensive surveys and professional consultants to tell you what is already known by the residents here and by our planning board and select board. The streets are narrow. The traffic is already congested. The prospect of building commercial on any of these side streets is simply illogical. Save the studies and surveys for the input needed when deciding how to proceed with North Main Street, something that exists beyond the scope of Article 11. Article 11 deals simply with the 9 properties zoned GBD on our side streets. Number 2, indifference now could have devastating, lasting consequences. Within the past 18 months, 2 developers have tried to acquire 11 Canal Street, one of the properties being discussed, with the intention of joining it to its abutting Main Street property, which is the building that houses Sakura. The vision for that land? An incredibly large mixed-use structure with significant commercial space downstairs and over 10 residential units above. Talk to the residents within Precinct 8. We love commercial zoning as much as one can love it, and we love supporting local business. But help us keep businesses operating along Main Street, not within our neighborhood. The risk we face tonight if we don't pass Article 11 as written is the prospect of an 844 Main Street-like megastructure looming over us, putting even more traffic stress on our side streets, further putting our children into harm's way. And again, I encourage you to talk to the planning board, talk to the select board. With regards to the side streets off of North Main Street, the master plan is destined to arrive at the same conclusion we are at today with Article 11. Number 3, the precedent for rezoning to RG already exists. As Ms. Schleicher spoke to earlier, between 1973 and 2000, significant portions of Main Street in Swanton were rezoned from light industrial and commercial to residential based on historical use. Article 11 emulates a similar thoughtful approach with regards to rezoning commercial properties to residential, again, based on their historical and current use. By rezoning these properties to residential, Article 11 isn't reducing anyone's property value. Residential properties continue to sell at premiums within the town. It does, however, reduce the risk of a select group of property owners compromising the integrity and entirety of a neighborhood, one whose value is strengthened by all residences being properly and responsibly zoned. So in summary, Article 11 is well thought out, a well thought out first step towards realigning the vision of a thriving North Main Street corridor with the realities of how we are using the land within the neighborhoods off North Main today. Having spoken at great lengths with members of our planning board, select board, and the opponents of Article 11, I feel even stronger about supporting Article 11 today than I did at the last session of town meeting. Please vote against this amendment. Please vote in favor of the article as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The motion to... One more thing.
I had ended the discussion at town meeting before, asking for a discussion with the planning board and some of the members of town meeting, and also for some of the people that spoke against it. And we did have that meeting. We did discuss, to Mr. Galvin's point, we did discuss options that we could put into place, and we spent a couple hours, Ms. Meister, Mr. Bogovich, and I, Ms. Pierce, and really working through. And it turns out that within the scope of Article 11, there wouldn't really be anything that is considered in order that wouldn't provide notice to the town where we could do it. Although there would be other options down the road, there wouldn't be anything here today. So I just wanted to say thank you to Ms. Meister, Ms. Bogovich, Mr. Bogovich, and Ms. Pierce for burning a couple hours and trying to to work this out. So thank you.
So I understand from the first meeting we had that the town moderator enjoys maximum discretion. So I'm going to recognize one more person and then place the motion to amend before the town meeting. Yes, sir.
Mr. Moderator, through you, I wonder if the other night when town council was answering the spot zoning question, he said he had absolutely no fears of spot zoning, but he's mentioned that he did have several other concerns. I wonder if he would be willing to let us know what they were. And
Right.
after that, I'd like to make one more comment.
The town meeting member asks what other concerns town council might have been referring to at our last session. Spot zoning not being one of them.
It is correct that I said I don't believe that Article 11 in its original form would be vulnerable to a spot zoning challenge. I don't believe I said I had other legal concerns about the article, and I don't have any. It's just up to town meeting to decide what it wants to do.
Yes, sir. I believe you had one more comment.
Yes, I'd like to, we were thinking of offering solutions to the problem, and the setback seemed to be a major problem, no rear setback. I mean, we didn't want to change that because it would change all the same parcels in the town. Well, it seems like a pretty logical thing that we maybe should get on. I mean, it's pretty hard to paint a house if you can't go on. So that's just something that should be done anyhow. And I've heard a lot tonight about 844 Main Street and what a monstrosity and how can we stand it. Yeah, we didn't like it too much probably when it was a gas station or a restaurant or a Dairy Queen or a monument place. Scooples, I guess everyone likes Scooples because there wasn't too much traffic there.
As a retailer, they're very sensitive about things like that. So it's like,
Also, yeah, this is to the amendment. We're talking about changing this. We don't want to do too many changes because, you know, we're afraid of what will happen. Well, 844 Main Street, yeah, no, everyone thinks it's big now. When it's done and decorated and landscaped, I mean, we talked about 955 Main Street the same way. I mean, that was so bad. And maybe one or two people still think it is. But I mean, it was a coal yard there. In the villages, same thing. Oh, that's Plywood Ranch. Oh, terrible. Yeah, but it's better than the hides that used to be there in the junkyard.
thank you, sir.
What's that?
Do you have more? We'd like to get to the motion, I think.
Yeah, I know, Mr. Moderator, but as a personal privilege, I mean, I sit here every night for 30 years. I don't speak very often. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is to amend is before town meeting, that motion being to delete those parcels which are currently zoned exclusively GBD2 and GBD3. This is motions to amend or by majority vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. The noes have it. And this brings us back to where we began, which is the consideration. Are there seven town meeting members rising to challenge? I don't think there is. Thank you, sir. No. The motion that is now before town meeting once again is the motion that has already been moved and seconded, that the town approve Article 11 as printed in your warrant. Are we ready for that question? I believe we are. Yeah, Mr. Lowy, could you repeat your question for the... Well, you heard from Mr. Betancourt. Was there anybody else voting? Okay, we had one other vote. So I'm being advised that this may be out of order now, since in fact we are on to the main motion.
It's my best speech.
Thank you. Sorry about that. The motion, which is before town meeting once again, is to approve Article 11 as printed in your warrant. This is a zoning article, obviously. Hopefully you all know that by now. And it as written in the motion booklet, and all those in favor of the motion, and the tellers, please be ready to count. Are you ready? Are you all out there? Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please rise. Only town meeting members obviously may vote. If you are not a town meeting member, I ask you to take a seat behind the hallway that's in back. Thank you. Do we have any counts, please? 10? 21? 34? 32? All those opposed to the main motion, please rise. Ten. 7. 12. 19. Uh, 145 town meeting members having voted, two-thirds vote required, that being 97. 97 having voted in the affirmative, Article 11 passes. I want to thank town meeting members for the courtesy of allowing me to do this, and also for the courtesy which, in fact, you've extended to each other. I appreciate that very much.
Well done, Mr. Howley. We'll take a quick break so that we can buy some things from the Girl Scouts. We'll be back in 5 minutes, please. 5-minute recess.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alan Iden. Welcome to our coverage, WinCam's coverage of the second session of Winchester's Springtown meeting here on Fall Town meeting here on November 15th. More like a winter town meeting if the weather predictions are correct for tonight. So our first half of town meeting here tonight has been taken up to this recess by the continuation discussion on Article 11. Article 11 was a motion by the Planning Board to rezone a swath of North Main Street, which North Main Street being from Skillings Road all the way up to the Woburn line. To correct the history of this zoning was, as we heard tonight, that the 325 properties were at risk because there was an arbitrary 150-foot setback set for commercial zoning along North Main Street. Now that meant many of the properties adjacent to the properties on North Main Street had split zoning. They were both residential and commercial. Now, as we heard from numerous speakers here tonight, that posed a problem, in the Planning Board's opinion, a problem with the property values along there, where there was a potential for properties on North Main Street to be combined with the properties immediately behind them for over-large commercial developments intruding into a residential neighborhood. So among the speakers we heard tonight was Peggy Schleicher, who's a longtime resident of North End. She talked about the history of the zoning on North Main Street and the efforts. This is an effort to complete the rezoning that was started many years ago, and also to protect the residential properties adjacent to the properties immediately on North Main Street. But we heard from quite a few residents who were in these adjacent properties against the plan, saying that these were downzoning their properties and reducing the value of them by changing them from a split residential and commercial zoning to a just purely residential zoning. A lot of people were talking about the new development currently being built on North Main Street as being overlarge for the neighborhood, also especially if that kind of development went into the neighborhood. We heard from resident Mr. Corsetti, who again suggested that the town meeting wait for the master plan that's in the works. Again, this 150-foot rule was set back in 1973. So what we heard tonight was a motion that came on the floor to remove 9 properties from this rezoning. So a lot of discussion on that. There was a motion to amend that to add another property. A lot of discussion on whether that was amounting to spot zoning. After much discussion, that amendment was voted down. We heard from Selectman Betancourt. There was a motion, and he and Town Meeting Member Conti made a motion to remove the zoning change from the 9 parcels, saying there was inadequate notice to the residents, the owners of those parcels. The Select Board came out 2 to 3 against the amendment. They were concerned that postponing this leaves the door open to large development, and spot zoning like this reduces the values and gives advantage to developers. There was discussion about the potential for the Sakura restaurant to combine with a property behind that and making an overly large development there, not in character with the neighborhood. We heard from another resident in the neighborhood said that there are already traffic concerns and with the children going to school. So they were concerned about increasing those problems in the neighborhood. We heard from Maureen Meister from the Planning Board, saying the Planning Board brought this forward because they were very concerned about protecting the residential properties and the gateways to these neighborhoods. Well, the motion to remove 9 parcels was defeated on a voice vote. And if you just tuned in, there was a 2/3, zoning always requires a 2/3 vote, and the vote required from the number of town meeting members that voted was 97. That was exactly the vote yes. So Article 11 has passed, and the rezoning of Main Street, North Main Street, will move forward. So there's a lot more business to conduct with this fall town meeting. And the moderator has indicated, incidentally, it's worth mentioning that Tom Howley came in as a substitute moderator. Presumably, our town moderator, Peter Haley, had a conflict and he recused himself. So we congratulate Tom Howley on stepping right in and doing a very admirable job on a very convoluted article. So we will resume in just a few minutes, going back to, I believe, Article 5, if I'm not mistaken, because Article 11 was taken out of order. So there are about 36 articles to be taken care of. So it's doubtful the town meeting will wrap up tonight. We'll probably have to meet again next Monday. So we will go into recess in a few minutes. The town meeting will resume, and I'll be back with a recap at the end of the evening.
So this brings us to Article 5. Article 5, the motion under Article 5 having been amended by its proponents, now reads as states revised Article 5. Under Article 5, it's moved and seconded that the town amend Chapter 8, Section 21 of the Code of Bylaws by deleting the text of the section and replacing it with the following. 1, except as otherwise set forth in Section 21.2, no person shall consume any alcoholic beverage or possess an open container of any alcoholic beverage as defined in Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 138, Section 1, while in or upon any public street, sidewalk, park, playground, or other public place in the town. 2, the Select Board, in its capacity as local licensing authority, may authorize the consumption and possession of alcoholic beverages in or upon any public street, sidewalk, park, or other public place in the town other than a playground to the extent permitted by state law. 3, no person shall consume any alcoholic beverage or possess an open container of any alcoholic beverage in or upon any private land or place in the town without the consent of the owner or authorized person in control thereof. In support of the motion under Article 5, the Select Board, through its member, Mr. Golliboff. Mr. Golliboff.
Moderator, town meeting members. So can we get the screen up? We started here. We had the Chamber of Commerce come and ask us. They want to have an event next September called Welcome Back Winchester. It would be like a Saturday evening where they would like to close down maybe a street and have an event that includes food and alcohol, as well as other shops to bring people that came back from the summer, bring them back to the shops in the town center. So we went back and we asked, so we've done that before where we've allowed alcohol in public places, including like Cheffelo Park. So we asked town council if that was something that we could allow, and they said yes, but the bylaw is not very well written and it's kind of ambiguous. So, and it has other problems. So here's the bylaw as it is today. So what we're going to change is the two things, or one thing is we're going to clarify, and that's the first part that is highlighted in red. The second part that is highlighted in red, we're going to just remove. And let me go to that one first because that's the easier one. So the current bylaw says that if you're caught drinking in public where you're not allowed to, that the select board hasn't allowed you to, then your open container, so you get a $300 fine, and that's by the rest of the bylaws. And the open container is seized and safely held by the police until final disposition of the charge. And then the police has to return it to you, okay? Disposition of the charge could take like 2 months. When you go to court, you fight it, right? So we asked the chief of police, and he fully supports removing this. He has no interest in keeping a bunch of half-full open containers in the back of the police station. So, okay, so that's the easy one. The harder one is the one that gives us the ability to permit drinking in public places. And public places are playgrounds, are parks, are the auditorium at Town Hall. And that's the second one that is highlighted there. So the question is public consumption allowed today in Winchester? The current bylaw says that it's forbidden in public places in the town, or while in or upon any private land or place in the town, without the consent of the owner or person having control thereof. So, is it allowed in public? Well, if the consent clause at the end only applies to the latter statement, the one about private, then no. We are not allowed to have alcohol at the auditorium at Town Hall, which we do all the time. We're not allowed to have alcohol at, what's the name of the, Cheffelo Park, which we allowed WIFI to have in 2014. So that's that. And yes, this is what previous town council and current town council has told us, that yes, the consent clause applies to both statements, so we are allowed to. Honestly, I am embarrassed to have this slide up here. The bylaws should not be this ambiguous. So what we realize is we need to fix it. And the way that we are saying to fix it is to basically rewrite it so that it's clear with the current interpretation of the current bylaw and the current practice that we have. So the first part, unpermitted alcohol in public places is still banned. So you can't walk down the sidewalk with a beer. It will be taken from you, and it will not be returned after 2 months. Okay? So watch out.
Section number 2, it explicitly says that the select board can permit. Now, that doesn't mean that we have to permit, but that we can permit. And it also explicitly excludes playgrounds. So right now, as it's currently written, if Article 5 does not pass, the select board can authorize alcohol in playgrounds. We decided we're going to rewrite this bylaw. Let's exclude playgrounds. And then the last part that is in private areas, that's unchanged. So again, a clarification of a badly written bylaw, and we recommend favorable action.
Further on the question? Yes. Mr. Heinhold.
Hello, town meeting members. I'm Dave Heinhold, Precinct 1. The question I have for the Board of Selectmen is that did they consult with the Board of Health regarding the public health aspects of allowing public drinking and encouraging it? I mean, I, like the new Supreme Court Justice, like beer also. But, but I don't know. What kind of messages is it sending to our young people that we want to expand public drinking? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Heinhold. Question to the proponents, did they consult with the Board of Health? My memory is Mr. Heinhold's on the Board of Health, so I think he may know the answer to that.
Yeah. So again, so one thing is we're not expanding public drinking. The bylaw just reflects what is currently in the bylaws. So no, we did not consult with the Board of Health. The Board of Health did not take a vote on this. So we talked to one member of the Board of Health last week. They had concerns on it. They have concerns on the implementation of it, but the reality is we can permit it now and the current bylaw. So whether Article 5 passes or not, we can still permit it. It's just we are clearing it up so that it's not, to me, this question should not be asked, okay? Our residents and our businesses deserve to know what they're allowed to do by the bylaw. And to be disambiguous, it's embarrassing to have that. So we're not changing anything.
Further on the question? Yes, sir.
May I?
Certainly.
Good evening. My name is Brian Bernalia. I'm a precinct town meeting member, Precinct 4. Tonight I stand in opposition to Article 5. Article 5 looks to expand alcohol sales to street festivals and outdoor events, the words that are actually in the background, by explicitly allowing the Select Board to issue alcohol permits on public property. I sincerely hope and expect that the Select Board, in close consultation with the Board of Health and Public Safety, will keep these events safe. But I'm concerned about the message this sends to the youth of Winchester. Are we saying that we cannot honor a hometown hero at a race unless alcohol is involved? Are we telling our children that a carnival is not enough unless you've had a few beers? Are we implying that concerts and ballet performances at the Mill Pond stage by our very children and fireworks display are actually just an excuse to drink more? There are numerous places in town where someone can purchase and drink alcohol, and I have been a supporter and a customer of many of these locations. With Articles 3 and 4, we've expanded greatly in number, but not in nature. Article 5 would be a paradigm shift. Many of us model responsible drinking to our children, and restaurants are an important part of this. If passed, this could expand drinking into different venues, and we should be cautious about allowing this blanket authority. Whatever the current Select Board plans, we are giving this authority not just to them, but to future ones as well. Our children do what they see. When they see people drinking responsibly with a meal, not drinking to excess, and assigning a designated driver, they are likely to do as they see in their own lives. When they see time-honored town events transformed into excuses to drink, we should not be surprised when they do the same. So therefore, I urge you to vote no on Article 5. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Pamela Court, Precinct 5. I was wondering if I could just get some clarification based on what Mr. Golubov said. What kinds of places would be considered public places? For instance, you mentioned Town Hall, and I know, for instance, at the Chili Fest, they were serving beer and wine. What places are included, and what is the intent for the types of places that you would expect that this would be implemented? And if it's not voted in, is there a possibility that those places would no longer be allowed to serve? Thank you.
Town meeting member asks the proponents to describe with more detail which public places they contemplate, and asks as a follow-up, if this article is not allowed, will there be an inability to serve beer at Town Hall, for instance? Mr. Golubov.
Yeah, so the intent is the current use. So, for example, the race honoring a local hero, the Glenn Doherty race, there was alcohol afterwards, and it was permitted by the select board in a public place, which is the auditorium. Right now, people have, the Chili Fest or have birthdays, and we do one-day licenses for the auditorium. The other place is, I mentioned, the Welcome Back Winchester. So we did talk to the Coalition for a Safer Community about being able to schedule that it doesn't coincide with events that are targeted at children. So the chamber is looking at doing that in September, and that would be in or around probably Thompson Street, where a lot of in the town center. But definitely the idea is to work with the Coalition for a Safer Community as well as the Board of Health to make sure that any events that are permitted would not be ones that target children as a primary target. It would be,
Further on the question, Mr. Deering, and then Mr. Powers.
Mr. Moderator, could we know the vote of the Board of Selectmen? And if it wasn't unanimous, could we have the minority point of view?
Mr. Deering asks of the Select Board whether, what the vote was, and if it was not unanimous, if somebody in the minority could articulate their opposition. Mr. Grensback, the chair of the Select Board. Mr. Grensback.
The board voted 4 in favor, 1 opposed. Mr. Rico would speak to the minority report.
Mr. Rico, it's a long-awaited turn at the podium tonight.
Finally get my chance. Mr. Moderator, I voted against the proposal. Just my personal opinion. There's a place to drink. There's restaurants downtown, and I think that's the message for our kids, and that's where we should be drinking. Alcohol is in restaurants and pubs downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rico. Mr. Powers, further on the question.
Mr. Moderator, fellow town meeting members, I think this is an article looking for a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. Selectmen have been able to give permits for anything and everything when they had to, prudently. But to say that we want tents on the street, which is in the article, and that we want to, something the chamber, they will ask for a permit and they'll get it. So I think I would want to have everybody vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. Further on the question. This is a majority vote. All those in favor of the motion under Article 5, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. The motion passes. This brings us to Article 6. Under Article 6, a motion brought by the Planning Board. This is a motion to amend the Winchester zoning bylaw by changing the references to Board of Selectmen to Select Board. So under Article 6, it moved and seconded that the town approve Article 6 as printed in the warrant. This is a 2/3 vote because it's changing the zoning bylaw. It's a language change, just changing Board of Selectmen to Select Board. Mr. Zucchelli, we don't need slides to understand this.
Yeah, we don't. I was hoping I didn't have to come up here.
Yeah. Just, if you want to make a statement in support, please do so.
We'd like to reflect the votes of the town meeting.
Thank you very much. This is a 2/3 vote. The chair will attempt a unanimous vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Chair declares the vote unanimous. This brings us to Article 7. Under Article 7, an article brought by the Planning Board in which the Planning Board seeks to amend the Winchester zoning bylaw. This is on page 8 of the motion booklet in front of you. Under Article 7, it's moved and seconded that the town approve Article 7 as printed in the warrant. Mr. Zakelli, the town planner, on behalf of Article 7. Mr. Zakelli.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So this has to do with dormer regulations above the second floor. So we're saying we're not talking about anything that's happening on the second floor. It's that half floor above the second, or the second and a half floor. So the objective here is to mitigate the impact of residential buildings that appear as three-story buildings. Projects that are addressed by this change are additions or new constructions with dormers of a certain size. The crux of the article is to add the following to the definition section, so having a definition for the word dormer and a definition for the word skylight, and for them to be specifically different. In addition to that, the actual regulation is below and says in all of the residential districts, in order to maintain the appearance of the top of the building as a half-story, the total width of all dormers on a single roof plane above the second story shall not exceed 50%. I'm going to have a picture in the next slide. So this is simply because 2.5 stories are allowed by right in all the residential districts in town. There are a few different types of dormers that can really add a full third floor. The idea is that this is an inconsistency between having a regulation of 2.5 stories, but being allowed to build dormers that make it a full 3-story building. So what the regulation is saying is that if the width of the dormers, if B plus C, is greater than 50% of A, the entire length of the roof line, a special permit would be required. A special permit can be denied. Although typically special permits, forget Winchester, just in general, special permits are generally approved with conditions. In Winchester, it's somewhere around the 90 to 95% mark of special permits being approved. We're not trying to talk about to limit the types of dormers. We're not saying the shape of the dormer, or so we're saying there's many different types of dormers that you can put on. You can put dormers in different positions. It's simply of how big can the dormer be. This is the type of dormer that I'm talking about that goes the full length of both sides. That visually it looks like a 3-story building. It doesn't look like a 2.5-story building. So it is an inconsistency within the zoning bylaw to only allow 2.5-story buildings, but to allow this that's essentially a 3-story building. So the initial feedback that we received dealt with confusion as to whether or not it was a total of 50% of all wall plane lengths on both sides, or 50% for each plane, meaning that is it 50% on one side? Can you only go up to 50? But no, you can go up to 50% on both sides. And if you're going to go more than 50% on either, that's when the special permit gets triggered. Once clarified that each side may be covered with 50% of the dormer without a review, there hasn't been clearly negative feedback received based on this article. That's all I have for this.
Thank you, Mr. Zakelli. Is there a recommendation from the Select Board?
The Select Board voted 5-0 in favor. Yes, we voted unanimously in favor of this regulation. Thank you.
Further on the question, this is a Planning Board motion to amend the zoning bylaw as set forth and previously read by the Chair. Requires a 2/3 vote. The Chair will attempt a voice vote to start with. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed. The Chair understands that there are town meeting members in opposition. All those in favor, please rise, and the tellers will count. Nineteen. 30, 33, 37. All those opposed, please rise. 1. 1. 1. 0. Yes? What? Mr. Deering, you... Okay. So, Mr. Deering, your no vote report to the chair is now 2 instead of 1. Is that correct? Thank you, Mr. Deering. Thank you, Ms. Allison. (123) members of the town meeting having voted, 119 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. The motion passes. Let's not let our residual annoyance at the planning board color the progress of events here. This brings us to Article 8. Under Article 8, the Planning Board seeks to amend Section 3.0, the Table of Use Regulations in Group 1 residential uses by replacing the references to attached dwelling with the word dwelling. Under Article 8, it's moved and seconded that the town approve Article 8 is printed in the warrant. It appears on page 9 of the warrant. On behalf of the proponents of the Planning Board, Mr. Zacchelli, the town planner. Mr. Zacchelli.
This is to delete unnecessary language in Section 3 in the Table of Uses. It's just to be consistent with existing language in Section 10 of the zoning bylaw. No projects are addressed by this change. All we're doing is deleting the words attached from this section and this section only. The words attached dwelling were taken out at a previous town meeting in the definition section, so this is just reflecting that change. It's a cleanup article.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zacchelli. His recommendations from the Select Board?
Select Board recommended unanimously that this be, it's getting late, recommended favorable action unanimously.
Motion comes before the town meeting on Article 8 as previously presented by the chair. 2/3 vote having been required. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Chair declares the vote unanimous. 2/3 threshold hasn't been met. Article 8 passes. This brings us to Article 9. Article 9 brought by the Planning Board, in which the Planning Board seeks a vote to amend Section 9.5.7 of the Winchester zoning bylaw by striking certain language as set forth on page 10 of the warrant book. Under Article 9, it's moved and seconded that the town approve Article 9 as printed in the warrant. On behalf of the proponents, Mr. Zacchelli, the town planner. Mr. Zacchelli.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Article 9 dealing with site plan review. The objective is to minimize adverse effects of additions and new constructions on abutters. The projects that are addressed by this change are all site plan review applications. The general concern is the special permit granting authorities, such as the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board, have had trouble mitigating unreasonable departure from the scale of new structures as they relate specifically to rear neighbors. This is a concern that has been brought to the Planning Board by residents. There was talk throughout town meeting that this was that the ZBA came to the Planning Board. That is not the case. The zoning board never voted on this one. They didn't bring this article to the Planning Board. So it's based upon a number of discussions. But I just want to make clear that the ZBA is not in any way promoting this article or was part of this article. The proposed change is to delete the last line of number 1 in section 9.5.7. What this does is it allows any negative effects that imposing buildings could have on rear neighbors. Winchester, as you know, is a very dense community. Out of 351 cities and towns, we're in the top 50 for density, meaning that we have a lot of people living really close to each other. So the idea here is that there still are effects on structures that are not associated with the public way, but are associated within neighborhoods. So this is the proposed change.
Thank you, Mr. Zacchelli. May we have a recommendation from the Select Board? Mr. Grensback.
Select Board recommended favorable action unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Grensback. Further on the question, motion comes under, I'm sorry, Mr. Conti.
I know this may be a futile gesture, fellow town meeting members, but it seems that the planning board, the purpose of this site plan review is to have some say in matters that affect the character of a neighborhood. as the current language reads, as viewed from a public way and places. It seems to me that we're forgetting what the purpose of this site plan review is. The character of a neighborhood is based upon what we see in front of us from the street, not what some minor view from the rear of a property may be. So again, I think this is out of keeping with the purpose of the site plan review in the first place. So I would ask that we vote against this.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. Further on the question. Motion comes before the town meeting on Article 9 is previously read by the chair. Article 9 moved and seconded. The town approve Article 9 is printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The chair recognizes Mr. Conti as a single voter voting no. Chair. The chair doesn't like to use its discretion on no votes, but recognizing 3 voters having identified themselves, the chair declares. All those in favor, please rise. I could do this all night long. $18. 33. 28. 36. All those opposed, please rise. Four, 3, 0, 0. 122 members of the town meeting having voted, 115 in the affirmative, 7 in the negative. The motion passes. This brings us to Article 10. Under Article 10, another article brought by the Planning Board in which the Planning Board seeks to amend the definition of parking space by making the area not less than 171 square feet as set forth on page 11 of the warrant in the motion booklet. Under Article 10, it's moved and seconded that the town approve Article 10 is printed in the warrant. On behalf of proponents, the Planning Board, Mr. Zucchelli. Mr. Zucchelli.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The objective here is to avoid confusion between the definition of a parking space and Section 5.1.6, which deals with off-street parking. Projects that are addressed are ones in which new parking is provided. So this is Section 5.1.6. I've highlighted 2 and 3 here just to show you that the minimum stall width is 9 feet. The minimum stall depth is 19 feet. 9 by 19 is the minimum spot anywhere in Winchester. The definition of parking space has an area of not less than 200 square feet. 9 times 19 is 171. This is not necessarily an inconsistency. I know how weird that might sound. The idea is that it could be both. It's an and, so it has to be a minimum of 9 by 19 and 200. So that no matter what, either the you can never get less than 9 by 19 in those dimensions, but the total would still have to be 200. The Planning Board confirmed with the Engineering Department as well as best practices, and everyone is completely comfortable with a 9 by 19 spot. No one is concerned about being able to fit in a 9 by 19 spot. The feedback received, the most convincing by far is saying decreasing the minimum size of a parking space will allow larger buildings to be built, as more cars would be able to fit on the lot. This is a reasonable, this is good feedback, actually. The answer, however, is that developers in town tend not to build any smaller residential or mixed-use buildings based on parking ratios. What ends up happening is they just decrease the number of units and increase the size decrease the number of units, but increase the size of the units. So the building's not getting any smaller, just the units are getting bigger. The point that this resident made that is totally correct is the fact that commercial-only buildings could potentially be slightly larger due to this change. But obviously, there are many other zoning dimensional controls that are a factor. Just this parking, the question is, will this parking lead to larger buildings? The answer is, for residential only or mixed use, we don't think it would. We think the building will be, other controls or other dimensions would control the size of the building. For commercial only buildings, it's possible that a building might be able to be, depending upon a lot of things, 5 to 10% bigger based upon this change.
Thank you, Mr. Zucchelli. There's a recommendation from the Select Board. You guys driving cars with 12.5-foot beam there?
We think the addition or the multiplication should add up and be the same in both. We recommend unanimously that you vote favorable action on this. I would note that there was a question about whether the CVS project died over the question of the size of the parking lot. The answer is no. It had other problems having to do with the way the zoning district was drawn, and the number of parking spaces at this point really did not influence that, the land court's decision.
Further on the question. Motion comes before the town meeting on Article 10, as previously presented by the chair. 2/3 vote having been required. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Chair declares vote unanimous. This brings us to Article 12, also brought by the Planning Board. Article 12, to see if the town will vote to amend Section 9.5.1, subsections 4-6 of the Winchester zoning bylaw, as set forth on page 15 of the warrant booklet. Under Article 12, it's moved and seconded. The town approve Article 12 as printed in the warrant. On behalf of proponents, Planning Board, Mr. Zucchelli, the town planner, Mr. Zucchelli.
Hold on a second.
We've already done 11, Brian.
Yeah, the reason why is I got up here, I came up here to an article that we pulled. Yeah.
What?
I thought, well, I was under the impression the planning board pulled it before town meeting started. I'll just say that then. This motion, this article is not.
It's moved and seconded that Article 12 be indefinitely postponed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Yes, Mr. Conti.
You'll be coming back in the spring with a modified version of it?
The town meeting member asks a point of information to the planning board. Will they be returning with this article? Mr. Zucchelli, in response to the town meeting member's inquiry.
Yeah, it's unclear. We felt that the article as is was not an equitable solution to a problem. I don't know what the planning board's going to bring next.
This brings us to Article 14, but before we get to Article 13, I'm sorry. This brings us to Article 13, but before we get to Article 13, the chair is in receipt of a request to receive a report out of order this evening, and given the substance of it, finds the request to be in order, and accordingly, the chair would ask that the meeting take a vote to suspend the rules to allow us to consider the Personnel Board report and the motions under that board report under Article 37. So the chair asks for a motion to suspend the rules to allow us to hear Article 37 out of order. The motion having been made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll now proceed to Article 37. Under Article 37, the report of the Personnel Report. Mr. Shimetz.
I don't see anything, Brian. Hey, Peter, how you doing, sir? I thought it was only going to take it if it looked like we were going to finish it. Oh, I shut it off, sorry. Forward, backwards. Okay. Good evening. I'm looking forward to not talking in your sleep. All right, so Article 37, there's a number, I think, 9 motions. It changed during our, there's 9 motions. And we will take them one by one rather than?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. All right, okay.
So Article 1 and Article 2, most of these articles are paired together. There's only one that goes by itself. Most of these articles are first a change, and then we pay for the change. So the motion 1 is the result of further reclassification studies that the Personnel Board and the town have undertaken. I think some of you will remember that a couple of years ago, the town did a classification study for a number of positions, and over the last couple of years, we have reacted to those to change the grade that's associated with a set of those positions. This year, the town undertook a study to look at management positions and compare those positions across neighboring towns, 14 towns. So there were 28 positions that were reviewed, and those 28 positions reviewed and compared in 14 towns. The first part of that review was to compare titles and tasks associated with those titles, and then to compare the grade at which those titles were paid. So this is a little confusing, so I tried to compare what you would see. So if you imagine a management position that's in grade E, it has a range which runs, in this particular case, 63.7K to 90.3K. And if we had a position that were grade E, there are several positions that were grade E that were reviewed, and it was found that we wanted to move that position to grade F, and I'll explain why we might want to do that, to grade F, then and that position at this point was at the max in grade, they would move to the next higher step within the higher grade. So in this particular case, if this position were at max in grade, they would move from 90.3 to 91.4K in grade F. Now, why would we move it? The criteria was set as follows. We went to those 28 towns. We took the payment for that given position plus all stipends that position got, and we compared it, and we compared max and grade, so top step, over those 28 towns, and we formed a median. So a median of the 28 top steps, and this is why I showed the picture, because even I didn't understand it until I drew the picture. So we took the median of the top steps, and if our median, if our top step were less than 90% of the median of the other 14 towns, then that position was slid up one grade. And this change would take place, assuming that the person in that position was in the top step of that grade, which is true for 8 out of 9 of the positions that were affected. So everybody understand that? Because there'll be a test. All right. So in general, as we will see in motion 2, the change resulted in the upper end of the salary grade increasing 10%, and for most cases where people were moved from position to from step to like step, there was less than a 1% change. The Personnel Board has recommended favorable action.
So this motion is as set forth in the Personnel Board report under Article 37, a blue-covered booklet on the table for us. Under motion 1, it's moved and seconded the town's compensation plan be amended effective January 1st, 2019, as recommended by the town manager and the Personnel Board, as set forth in Appendix A, reclassification of positions on Schedule 4, management schedule. There's a deletion of the positions set forth on the first page and an addition of the positions set forth on the second page. Motion having been made and presented by the Personnel Board, may we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? Mr. Cotillo, and Mr. Cotillo, if you want to speak comprehensively to the motions, the chair is happy. If you want to speak to them one by one, it's up to you.
We voted the same on all, so I can speak to all of them.
Great.
Finance Committee reviewed and voted favorable action unanimously for all of the Personnel Board articles this evening. Speaking to this one in particular, it was our understanding that there could be some potential cost savings associated with actually making this change based on the the change in terms of the classifications, and that theoretically this gets us in line with other towns, though this is a bit more of a stretch, hopefully reducing the likelihood of attrition.
Thank you very much. When we have a recommendation from the Select Board.
The Select Board recommended favorable action on all the motions. In particular, on this one, we were concerned about hiring and retention. When we lose people, the cost of hiring and training and bringing in a new person is many times higher than the cost of the changes we're looking at here. Second consideration was that the amounts, which are pretty modest, that are involved here are already incorporated in the budget that the town meeting has approved. So we're not spending more than we anticipated.
Motion comes before the town meeting on motion 1 under Article 37 as previously presented by the chair. Majority vote required. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to motion 2 under Article 37. Under motion 2, it's moved and seconded the town appropriate the sum of $14,078 to the following fiscal year 19 municipal personal service budgets as listed below to fund wage increases effective January 1, 2019 as a result of the reclassification of positions on Schedule 4, Management Schedule. $14,078 shall be transferred from the fiscal year 2019 unallocated wage account 0312521, and the particular departments and the total of the appropriation are set forth on page 2 of the handout under Article 37. On behalf of Article 2, the Personnel Board, Mr. Shimetz.
I don't really have much more to add.
Majority vote required. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to Article 3, or Motion 3, I'm sorry. Motion 3, moved and seconded that Schedule 2, CS Clerical, 3, Professional Technical, 4, Management, 5, Miscellaneous, and 6, Recreation of the town's compensation plan be amended to reflect cost of living wage adjustments for the municipal non-union employees of the town as recommended by the town manager and the personnel board as set forth in Appendix B, fiscal year 19, non-union municipal compensation schedules, January 1, 2019. Motion 3 on behalf of proponents, personnel board, Mr. Shimetz.
Yes, so motion 3 and motion 4 are paired. Motion 3 is the change to the various schedules, and motion 4 will be the appropriation to pay for it. Motion 3 is to raise the non-union pay scale by 0.75% effective January 1st. As we'll see in motion 5, we have completed the operation of funding all of the contracts for this 3-year period, just in time to start again next year. As has been the case across all the contracts, the union contracts got a 0.75 cost of living increase for this year, and this is viewed as an equitable action on the part of the town for the non-union employees.
Motion comes before the town meeting as previously read by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to motion 4. Motion 4, moved and seconded. The town appropriates sum of $25,379 to the following fiscal year 19 municipal personal service budgets as listed below to fund a 0.75% cost of living wage increase for municipal non-union employees effective January 1, 2019. $19,431 shall be transferred from fiscal 19 unallocated wage account 0312521. $948 shall be transferred from water and sewer retained earnings, and $5,000 shall be transferred from recreation retained earnings. The appropriation amounts and the department numbers are set forth on page 3 of the handout under Article 37. Further on motion number 4, the Personnel Board, Ms. Shimetz.
Again, this reflects the makeup of the places that the money goes or comes from reflects the people that it is going to benefit. So most of it comes from the unallocated wages, but in those areas where the people worked in either the water and sewer or the recreation department, it came from their retained earnings. But beyond that, this is just the appropriation for the effects of motion 3. And we recommend favorable action.
Motion number 4 is previously read by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Motion number 5 under Article 37. It's moved and seconded that Schedule 1, clerical compensation schedule of the town's compensation plan be amended in accordance with the recommendation of the Personnel Board as set forth in Appendix C, Clerical Workers Union Fiscal Year 18 and Fiscal Year 19 Agreement, and pursuant to a memorandum of understanding reached between the Select Board and the SEIU Local 888 Winchester Clerical Workers dated October 9th, 2018. Motion number 5 on behalf of proponents, Personnel Board, Mr. Shimetz.
As I said earlier, we have settled the clerical workers' contract. They are the final of the units that work in the town to be settled in this 3-year period. You may remember that in the spring, we settled and paid for 1 year of that contract, FY17. This settles FY18 in retrospect and FY19 in progress. This contract will now end coterminously with the others in January 30th of next year, at the same time as this fiscal year ends. I believe, yes, okay. I just want to make sure I can see it right here. All right. These are the main changes to the contract. As you can see, the cost of living changes as they affect FY18 and FY19. FY18, as I said, FY17 has already been paid for at the Springtown meeting. This is the change, not the paying. So there'll be a 2% and a 0.5% retroactive for FY19, 2% taking effect effectively on July 1st at 2017. The FY19, the final FY18 change effectively taking place January 1st. There's another 2% retroactive back to January of this year, and finally there'll be a 0.75% change taking place in this coming January. The other change will be to longevity pay. That's a payment that people get when they achieve a certain level of service. As you can see, I won't read them, but you can see what they were, and so I'm going to learn to spell after this. But anyway, you can see what they were previously, what they will be in the future, and their increase. The Personnel Board recommends favorable action.
Yes, sir. Motion number 5. The town meeting member's question is, are the non-union employees keeping pace with the union employees with respect to cost of living adjustments over the past few years? Mr. Steinmetz.
Well, that's a really broad question, so I can't answer it over a broad sweep of years, but certainly over the last 3 years they have.
Thank you. Further on the question, motion comes, motion number 5 is previously presented by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion passes. This brings us to motion number 6. Motion number 6, which is the payment allocation for the changes just voted by the meeting under motion number 5. Motion number 6, moved and seconded, the town appropriate the sum of $83,677 to the following fiscal year 19 municipal personal service budgets as listed below to fund retroactive increases in wages in FY18 or FY19 for employees of SEIU Local 888 Winchester Clerical Workers. $69,051 should be transferred from the fiscal year 19 unallocated wage account 0312521. $7,282 should be transferred from the water and sewer retained earnings, and $7,344 should be transferred from the recreation retained earnings. The particular department numbers and the allocations and appropriations are as set forth on page 4 of the booklet under Article 37. Motion number 6, proponents Personnel Board, Mr. Steinmetz.
Again, this is the paired article the paired motion with motion 5, and again, this is the motion to appropriate the money to cover the changes in the contract.
Motion comes before the town meeting as previously presented by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to motion number 7 under Article 37. Under motion 7, moved and seconded, Schedule 5, miscellaneous positions of the town's compensation plan be amended due to a clerical error in accordance with the recommendation of the Personnel Board as set forth in Appendix D, Schedule 5, miscellaneous positions compensation schedule amendment. Mr. Steinmetz to explain the clerical error.
Yes.
Steinmetz.
Yeah. It's again. This is a pen and ink change. We passed a change to the way we chronicled the highest possible payment to crossing guards in the Springtown meeting. There was an error. It should have read 16.66 cents, $16.66 per hour. It read $16.33. There is no financial impact to this motion. We recommend favorable action.
Motion comes before the town meeting under motion number 7, Article 37 is previously presented by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to motion number 8 under Article 37. Motion number 8 is moved and seconded that Schedule 5 miscellaneous positions of the town's compensation plan be amended effective January 1, 2019 to include an addition of a new stipend for the OPEB trustee in the amount of $5,000 per year in accordance with the recommendation of the Personnel Board as set forth in Appendix E, Schedule 5, miscellaneous positions compensation schedule amendment add OPEB trustee, $5,000 a year. Motion number 8. Personnel Board, its proponents, Mr. Chimetz.
Last spring, some of you may remember that we decided to change the way we keep OPEB funds and to create a locked-down trust for that purpose. At present, they are segregated, but within town banking funds. This creates a trust fund not dissimilar to the one that we have in place for the pension fund. At the time, we also made provisions for the treasurer to be a trustee of those funds, and this is to pass a stipend for the added work involved in running that trust fund. We recommend favorable action.
Motion number 8 comes before the town meeting as previously presented by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to the last motion under Article 37, motion number 9. Under motion number 9, it's moved and seconded. The town appropriates the sum of $2,480 to the fiscal year 2019 Treasurer Collector's Personal Service Budget, Department 1350, to fund the addition of the OPEB trustee stipend on Schedule 5 miscellaneous positions of the town's compensation plan effective January 1, 2019. Said appropriation shall be transferred from the fiscal year 2019 unallocated wage account 0312521. Mr. Chimetz, motion number 9.
Right. This is the appropriation for that stipend. We have half a year. This is approximately half that $5,000. And this comes from the unallocated wage fund in FY19. And this, in fact, effectively exhausts the FY19 unallocated wage fund just in time for all the added unallocated wages. We recommend that favorable action.
Motion number 9 is previously presented by the chair. It comes before the meeting. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Well done, Mr. Chimetz. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We return to Article 13. Under Article 13, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to lease, sell, convey, release, or otherwise dispose of any interest in a portion of land located at 21 Glenwood Avenue in the town. Article 13 is on page 16 of the warrant booklet. Under Article 13 is moved and seconded that the town approve Article 13 is printed in the warrant. On behalf of the proponents, the Select Board, Mr. Arrico. Mr. Arrico.
Trying to work on an issue at work.
We'll go forward, that goes back. Okay.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Select Board voted unanimously to support Article 13. Article 13 relates to a property that the town acquired, 20 Glenwood Ave, through tax title in 2018. It was an abandoned property in unlivable conditions. Glenwood Ave is off of Main Street. I hope it's not in the GBD3, but I don't want to get into that. This is the property. The Select Board believes that the acquisition of this property will create a great opportunity for one affordable housing unit. The next steps will be to create an RFP for an affordable housing reuse of the property. This article will allow the Select Board to sell or lease the property for the purpose of creating an affordable housing unit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arrico. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? Mr. Cotillo, as chairperson.
Finance Committee voted favorable action. We voted unanimously.
Does the Planning Board have a position on Article 13? Mr. Jarius, its chair. Mr. Jarius.
The planning board did not take a motion on, did not take a, I'm sorry, what is the language I'm supposed to use? I'm a little, we did
Planning
not
Board did
vote.
not take a position on Article
We
13.
did not take a position on
Which
this
returns us to
article.
the motion under Article 13 as previously
Thank you.
presented by the chair. This is a two-thirds vote, acquisition of land. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Chair declares vote unanimous. This brings us to Article 14. Under Article 14, to see if the town will vote to authorize the Select Board to acquire mortgage or other security interests in the real estate known and numbered as 164th Street under Article 14, which appears on page 17 of the warrant booklet. It's moved and seconded. The town approve Article 14 is printed in the warrant. On behalf of Article 14, as proponents, the Select Board, through their member, Mr. Rico. Mr. Rico.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, the Select Board voted unanimously to support Article 14. Mr. Moderator, through the town's Asa Fletcher Fund, the Select Board had provided a loan of $4,860 to a Winchester resident. The resident had stated that they were going to eventually gift the property to the town of Winchester as part of their estate. As a means of security for this loan, the Select Board thought it was reasonable and appropriate to create a mortgage instrument as a security on this loan.
Thank you, Mr. Rico. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? The Finance Committee, through its chairperson, Mr. Kill. Mr. Kill.
Finance Committee voted favorable action. We voted unanimously to secure this lien.
Mr. Jarius, on behalf of the Planning Board.
The planning board took no action on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jarius. Majority vote required. Motion comes before the town meeting on Article 14 as previously read by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to Article 15. Articles 15 through 18 present a series of articles and motions dealing with certain land off Highland Avenue in the town. Motions brought by the Select Board and the Planning Board. The chair's inclination with respect to the conduct of the meeting is to try and complete 15 to 18 and conclude no later than 10:30. We will need to return on Monday. The chair is in receipt of the following information, which is that the Conservation Commission has a position on these articles, and its chairperson is not present. The chair is inclined to proceed with the articles, but the chair would find a motion to continue to be in order if someone wants to argue that point. So, under Article 15, it's moved and seconded. The town approve Article 15 as printed in the warrant. On behalf of its proponents, the Select Board, and Mr. Betancourt, on behalf of the Select Board.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We had started this process in spring town meeting, and we appreciate town meeting's approval for us to move forward with the negotiation with the developer. As you see in the background there, I just want to highlight the objectives of the article. We look to avoid the construction of 24 mid-rise apartment units on the adjoining land shown on the plan, support the development of 5 single-family homes and 2 affordable home units on the reassembled land parcels, tear down the dilapidated 22 Highland Avenue structure, and upgrade and repair Sawmill Brook culvert on the property, and that will be dealt with later on Article 34, and also to preserve as much open space in and around the brook as possible. And just to give you a little procedural background, a little history, there was a proposal initially by a developer to develop the parcel. It was there was a purchase and sale on the property, and the zoning at that point only allowed a single-family home access off of Highland Avenue. The developer requested a variance through an application to the ZBA to develop those options. In spring 2015, that was withdrawn by the applicant, and there was no town land included at all. In August 24th of 2015, there was a definitive subdivision application submitted but denied by the Planning Board on January 6, 2016. And that was for a proposed 4-lot subdivision with a new road connecting Highland Avenue and North Border Road. This was actually denied because the DCR had denied approval for the connection to North Border Road. Subject to that, there was the developer proposed through a mass housing 40B application to do a larger project. They proposed a 24 condo unit project, 6 of which would be affordable on a 1.47 acre parcel, and that only used the original parcel, so there was no town land included. The town engaged in discussions and negotiations, and we submitted an RFP for the sale of town land to try to put together a parcel that would work for us and the developer and limit the exposure to the neighborhood there. That was issued in August of 2018, and the notice of the award was to the 5 Points Development on September 24th, 2018. Then there was a definitive subdivision plan for the project, and that was using town land as well. There were 5 lots with a hammerhead road, and there was no connection to North Porter Road. So that was filed October 12th of 2018, and the first public hearing was held on November 13th and continued until December 12th of this year. If you take a look of the proposed 40B development, this is what we spoke with the neighbors and we were trying to avoid. It was a large 24-unit project that was pushed very closely to the residents in the back of the property. And if you look at what is proposed under Articles 15 through 17, we endeavored to pull the properties away from the adjoining property owners. And the parcel 6 there is the land that we swapped with the property owner for affordable housing. And the area that's outlined in red is where the developer will build the majority of their project. And the parcel A and parcel B is what we really swapped with them to move our property to parcel 6. And we negotiated to have some contribution to culvert work that is long overdue there. So I'm sure that there will be no questions, so I'll move forward, and there are plenty of staff here to answer questions as well. So,
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Bettencourt.
you.
We have a recommendation from the Finance Committee. Finance Committee, through its chairperson, Mr. Cotillo. Mr. Cotillo.
So the Finance Committee voted favorable action, actually on all 4 of these articles, but speaking to this one in particular, it's the one that allows this to be set into motion with the thought that this helps us better manage housing production with budgetary concerns in mind, and also, as Mr. Bettencourt said, that allows us to mitigate costs for certain needed capital projects, the Sawmill Brook Culvert project in particular.
Thank you, Mr. Cotillo. May we have a recommendation from the Planning Board? Planning Board, through its chairperson, Mr. Jarius. Mr. Jarius.
The planning board voted 4-0 with 1 absence. Our vice chair, Ms. Meering, was not with us for the vote. We voted 4-0 in favor. I think we wanted to note that we realize that we are here because we are threatened with a 40B on this property. And at the suggestion of DHCD, we are working in good faith with the developer. The town has put in an extraordinary amount of effort, which I don't think, well, I hope people recognize. We recognize there are compromises in this plan, and we understand there are some trade-offs in terms of the amount of conservation land which has been swapped. And we voted this forward because we think this is an important project, and we think that town meeting should have a say on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jarius. The chair is in receipt of the following communication from the Winchester Housing Partnership Board. Mr. Serbier and Mr. Rogers apologize that they're unable to be with us this evening. Their input on Article 1518. The Housing Partnership Board decided not to take a formal position on Articles 15-18. The 4 current articles only address proposal by Mr. Miller to build 5 single-family homes on a parcel of land located between Highland Ave and North Border Road. In a subsequent step, the Select Board plans to build 2 affordable housing units on Lot 6 that will have access from North Border Road and therefore will be independent of Mr. Miller's proposed development. The Housing Partnership Board supports the construction of this additional affordable housing on Lot 6. This brings us to the question under Article 15, as previously presented by the chair. Further on the motion, Mr. Whitehead.
A question to the Select Board.
Do we have a affirmative permission from the DCR to complete that driveway onto parcel 6?
Town meeting member asks the select board whether or not the town has permission from Massachusetts DCR to complete the proposed driveway.
DCR has approved the developer for one single driveway in that area, and that will come to us through the land swap here. So one single driveway. We do have authority from DCR.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. This is a, yes, sir.
Sorry about this. Oh, just a quick one. You mentioned earlier that the Conservation Commission was not here tonight to speak, and I'm not going to slow it down because they're not here. But I would ask if anyone in the room knew anything about what the Conservation Commission might say and was willing to go out on a limb and state it, that would not make us have to hear them next week tell us they were against it. So why don't we have someone speak to that if anyone is willing?
Mr. Beechwood is a member of the Conservation Commission and has both kindly alerted us to their absence and now has some willingness to speak to the issue. Thank you very much, Mr. Beechwood.
Town meeting members, moderator. On behalf of the Conservation Commission, we met and voted unanimously about this project in whole. We wrote a letter to the Select Board, which we wanted to read here tonight. The primary duties of the Winchester Conservation Commission are to preserve, protect, and promote open space and access to town-owned land. The land adjacent to the 22 Highland Ave is a town-owned parcel of significant environmental value and one of the few remaining such pieces. It contains one of only 3 perennial streams in town, providing access to the Middlesex Fells and supports the continuation of the wildlife habitat in the area. Because of these values, the Conservation Commission has concerns regarding its proposed use, the sacrifice of town-owned open space land for housing development. As a town, we are in the process of developing a housing production plan. If this town-owned parcel's development plans are reserved until the housing production plan has been completed, it is possible the developments could be coordinated with the other town planning efforts and provide a higher return for the destruction and permanent loss of land. Seeing multiple acres yield only a few affordable housing units seems like a low-value proposition and would not significantly increase our status being way off of our 10% affordable housing requirement. With a more comprehensive perspective provided by the housing production plan as well as the master plan in the works, we would have a better understanding of the trade-offs being made while yielding one of the few unprotected town-owned open spaces. Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beechwood. Further on the motion. Motion comes before the town meeting because it's the disposition of land. It requires a 2/3 vote of the meeting. Motion comes under Article 15 as previously presented by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No. All those in favor, please rise, and the tellers will count. $18. 23. 26. 25. All those opposed, please rise. Seven. 6. 6. 10. 121 members of the town meeting having voted, 92 in the affirmative, the motion passes. This brings us to Article 16. Article 16, in which the Select Board seeks to acquire by purchase, donation, eminent domain, or otherwise the parcel shown as the parcel Lot 6 on the plan, land off Highland Avenue. Under Article 16, it's moved and seconded. The town authorizes the Select Board to acquire by purchase, donation, or otherwise a parcel shown as parcel lot 6 on the plan land off Highland Avenue, subject to an easement for the installation, maintenance, repair, and replacement of a water line across that parcel to North Border Road on such other terms and conditions as the Select Board may determine. On behalf of proponents, the Select Board, Mr. Betancourt. Mr. Betancourt.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As mentioned earlier, these 3 articles are really a package to resolve the 40B issue at the 22 Highland property. So this is necessary for us to move forward with the project, to authorize us to do the land swap for the project.
The chair understands from their previous comments that the Finance Committee and the Planning Board are in approval of Article 16. If not, would ask the chairs to please rise. The motion comes before the town meeting as previously presented by the chair under Article 16. Majority vote required. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. This brings us to Article 17, a motion brought by the Planning Board to see if the town will vote to amend the official zoning map of the town. Under Article 17, it moved and seconded the town vote to amend the official zoning map of the town as printed in the warrant. This is on page 20. Mr. Zakelli, for the clarification of the chair, the motion makes reference to a map as printed in the warrant. I don't see one in mine. Is there a map available?
There we go.
Thank you.
This is a zoning change that's needed for the project to move forward. This is within the development agreement that the planning board must at least try to present this at town meeting. So what's happening is that parcels A and B that you just allowed to be conveyed to the developer, those that are currently, A and B are currently zoned SCI with schools. It stands for schools, conservation, and institutional. Parcels A and B would be zoned to be the same as the private land on this map as in RDB 10. So it's parcels A and B going from SCI to RDB 10.
Thank you very much. May we have a recommendation from the Select Board? The Select Board, may we have a recommendation?
The Select Board recommends favorable action by a vote of 5-0.
And the chair understands that the Planning Board and the Finance Committee, consistent with the earlier comments, are in favor of the article as presented. Yes, further on the question. Mr. Wilson.
Roger Wilson, Precinct 1. Through you to the proponents, is Parcel 6 currently RDB 10? And is the parcel that is contemplated to be the site of the affordable housing that's owned by the town currently, does this alter the zoning of that, which is SCI currently?
In response to the town meeting member's question, Mr. Zakelli, the town planner. Mr. Zakelli.
Parcel 6 is currently owned by the developer, and it's still part of RDB 10. So it's parcel 6 is we've carved it out as mentioned by Mr. Betancourt in order to come to us. The goal, like Mr. Betancourt said, was to use that as driveway access for an affordable housing unit. So we would be going through a 40B process of our own to put 2 units there, meaning that we don't need to change the zoning of parcel 6 because it would be through the 40B process that supersedes zoning.
Yes. Mr. Marmon.
If you remember my comments at the Springtown meeting, I'm very much against using this SCI land for housing. I think the land down on Highland Avenue is a much better place to put affordable housing. And it was my understanding that you were not going to rezone it, hence could not build housing on the SCI. To turn around and make it a 40B, I think is, I feel a little underhanded. I think this town meeting should decide if we want to change that SCI property to RDB.
Thank you,
Hence,
Mr.
I
Marmon.
will vote against this and hope you all will.
Mr. Marmon? Further on the question, I think it might be helpful to the extent that the changes, the zoning changes in Article 17 play a role in the approval of Articles 15 and 16 that we've just voted on, that if Article 17 is integral to the that development proceeding, I think would be helpful if that's the case, if the Select Board would articulate that. If the zoning change is independent of the approvals under 15 and 16, then we can view this independently. If the Select Board has the position that they are all of a piece and one is reliant on the other, then I think it would be helpful to the meeting if they could clarify that. Just saying. Mr. Grensback.
Select Board is unanimous in agreeing with the moderator's interpretation. They are part and parcel of the thing. To Mr. Marmon's question, we cannot rezone parcel 6. It's already in an RDB. We would not rezone the SCI until we actually own the project and get town meeting permission to go ahead with the 40B up there. So parcel 6 is already zoned for housing. We would use the minimum amount needed to create perhaps a two-family duplex using a piece of parcel 6 and perhaps a little piece of SCI. If we do it as a friendly 40B project in the town's direction, we would get to define the minimum amount of that area we need. We cannot do that until we get this piece done, and it's all part and parcel of the same thing. We can't go ahead with the subdivision development without moving rezoning A and B. And if we don't go ahead with the project, we face the issue that the developer may come back and put 24 units on the private property alone. The road looks like a ski slope if you do that, and it's simply an unbuildable lot, but they could force it down our throats. So the trade-off is some SCI land to avoid that.
Further on the question, Mr. Marmon with a follow-up. Mr. Marmon.
Yes. I'm not trying to kill this whole project. I'm just trying to have a vote of this town meeting on whether or not we want affordable housing on a piece of land that I consider to be a part of the Fells. I would like for the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, to bring that decision back to this meeting. You can do it after we've approved everything else, I understand, but I think it should come back to this meeting. Will you do that?
Mr. Marmon asked of the Select Board whether or not it would come back to the meeting for further use of the property after the rezoning. Mr. Grensback.
Yes. We have the option to build on parcel 6. The other option is to replace the 22 and build a couple units down in the corner here. I would point out the problem with the developing of the lower corner on Highland Avenue, just above the house, is the topography. It's basically a hill. And in order to put back one unit further away from the water, you'd have to do an awful lot of fill down there, and we don't entirely know the trade-off on the costs. What we would propose to do if this is approved by town meeting, is come back, perhaps at Springtown meeting, with a fairly definitive plan about what to do with parcel 6 and what to do with the front property out there. So the short answer to your question is yes, we would come back.
Thank you, Mr. Grensback.
I think, having said, we are very sensitive to the fact that we are using, it's not conservation land in this area, and we try to minimize it.
Thank you, Mr. Grensback. This is a 2/3 vote because it involves a zoning change. Chair will attempt a voice vote in the first instance. The motion comes before the town meeting under Article 17, the town clerk having verified that the map as referenced in the motion does indeed appear in the warrant. It's moved and seconded the town vote to amend the official zoning map of the town as printed in the warrant. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes.
Chair declares vote unanimous. This brings us to Article 18. Under Article 18, it's moved and seconded the town vote to appropriate. Yes, sir. What purpose do you rise? You voted no? The chair failed to recognize that at the time. The chair will amend its count to acknowledge that there was one vote in opposition, and accordingly, the town clerk will so note the chair uses its discretion to declare the vote meeting the two-thirds threshold. This brings us to Article 18. Under Article 18, it's moved and seconded the town vote to appropriate $30,000 from free cash for the demolition of the house at 22 Highland Avenue and associated site costs, including without limitation the cost of removing any hazardous materials. Motion brought by the Select Board. On behalf of its proponents, the Select Board, Mr. Betancourt. Mr. Betancourt.
Do you need? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The Select Board recommends favorable action by a vote of 5-0. This is, again, part of the project. The 22 Highland building that exists there now is in terrible shape, and part of moving this project forward is to appropriate $30,000 to remove and demolish the property. Some of those costs we will recover from the developer as part of our deal.
This is the final motion in the Highland Ave project. The Finance Committee and the Planning Board having previously indicated their approval to the meeting. This is a majority vote required. The motion comes before the town meeting as previously presented by the chair. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. The chair, with an affinity for even numbers, would like to conclude this evening by doing Article 19, leaving us at Article 20. This is an article brought by the Select Board under Article 19 involving the traffic signals at Johnson Road and Ridge Street. It's moved and seconded. The town vote to appropriate $75,000 from free cash for the purposes set forth in Article 19 as printed in the warrant. On behalf of the proponents, the Select Board, Mr. Betancourt, under Article 19.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is an additional sum of money of $75,000 from free cash to begin some design work on the traffic light at the corner of Johnson and Ridge. Town meeting had approved a temporary installation which exists there now. This project came as a result of a Safe Routes to School grant that several members of the community, including the proponent, Myrna Chan McRae, several years back. We've been waiting for the government to appropriate that money to us, and we did put this temporary installation in the meantime. The Safe Routes to School grant and the work from Ms. Chan McRae involves a lot more involved work than what we've done. The Select Board is responsible for the ugly traffic light that is there now, but the Safe Routes to School grant will do some work to install new sidewalks and install new traffic signals and a additional turning lane there, and also install a new crosswalk and rapid flashing beacon at the intersection of Coolidge Road and Ridge Street. This has become a very highly trafficked area, and even a slight delay that we experienced in the installation. We hit ledge up at the corner there of the temporary light. A couple days we were delayed, and there was a serious accident there in that time. So I want to say I appreciate the contribution for the temporary structure. The full amount of the grant from the Safe Routes to School is over $1.6 million for this work. I know it's a little shocking when you don't look at traffic infrastructure on a daily basis, but that's what these projects really involve, quite a bit of infrastructure work. So we would appreciate your support for transferring $75,000 from free cash. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betancourt. May we have a recommendation from the Finance Committee? The Finance Committee's chairperson, Mr. Cotillo. Mr. Cotillo.
Thank you. The Finance Committee voted favorable action as this is needed to secure funding for the permanent light and the traffic solution work provided by the Safer Communities grant. We voted unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Cotillo. Further on the question, Mr. Ferguson.
I understand it will be reimbursed.
Town meeting members asked whether or not we'll be reimbursed for the $75,000 or if this is in addition to the grant. Mr. Bettencourt.
We will not be reimbursed. This is in addition to the grant. It's an additional cost.
Thank you, Mr. Bettencourt. Yes, Mr. Johnson. Is the turning lane under the traffic signal on Ridge or Johnson? Asked by Mr. Johnson, his namesake road. I always thought it was Jimmy till someone pointed out to me it was your road.
It's Johnson, I believe. Yes, we'll name it after you, of course.
Mr. Bettencourt makes a weak guess that the turning signal's on Johnson. He doesn't really know.
It has been confirmed by a nod from the town engineer, so.
Very good. Okay, 2/3 vote required. The motion is previously presented by the chair. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Chair declares vote unanimous. We will come back on Monday evening at 7:30. Mr. Jarius, for what purpose do you rise? You can raise that question when we reconvene on Article 11, Mr. Jarius. Motion to adjourn. Second. We're adjourned until Monday night at 7:30. Thank you very much.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. We are here at Winchester High School on November 15th for the second session of Winchester's Fall Town Meeting, which has just wrapped up. The first half of the meeting was a continuation of the discussion of Article 11, which was a very contentious proposal by the Planning Board to rezone a lot of parcels on North Main Street, that being Main Street from Skillings Road to the Woburn line. The history of it, as we heard, was that in the 70s, the zoning was set as commercial zoning for 150 feet back from Main Street, which left a lot of parcels as partially zoned residential and partially zoned commercial. So we heard a lot of discussion on that. The Planning Board's proposal was to actually take these parcels, the parcels behind the parcels on Main Street, and rezone them as residential. We heard a lot of people talking about the potential of combining properties that are one parcel back from Main Street and building very large commercial developments, such as one of the ones that's in progress right now. So we heard a lot of arguments on both sides. There was an amendment to remove 9 properties from the rezoning. A lot of discussion on that. There was an amendment to amend the amendment to increase it to 10 properties. Most of the discussion was that this would create spot zoning. So after a lot of discussion, the vote was approved just by the minimum number of 2/3 votes, which was 97, the exact number of votes to pass Article 11 for rezoning of the back properties. Again, the properties one back in the residential areas just off North Main Street. After the recess, we moved very quickly for some housekeeping articles. Article 5 was to clarify the Select Board's authority to issue liquor license, temporary liquor licenses for events on public property. That was passed. Article 6 was to amend the zoning bylaws to reflect the change of the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. That was passed. Article 7 was to clarify definition of dormers and skylights. There were some issues shown where dormers, which are normally allowed on 2.5-story buildings for the 3rd floor, could take up almost the entire 3rd floor, basically creating a 3-story building instead of the intended 2 stories. So with the adoption of this change, dormers cannot exceed 50% of the length on a roof line without getting a special permit. That was passed. Article 8, zoning, a table of use for attached dwellings to clean up some language, was passed. As was Article 9, language to clean up some of the regulations on the size of structures. Article 10, A definition of the size of parking spaces was also passed to change the definition of a parking space to a minimum of 171 square feet. Article 12 on size of buildings was indefinitely postponed. And then taken out of order, we heard from Article 37, which was the report of the Personnel Board to appropriate and approve the changes they had negotiated with various town boards. Those were all passed. Article 13 was to authorize the town had taken possession of a property at 20 Glenwood Ave, which is off North Main Street, through a tax taking. This was an article to limit the sale of that property for only for use of affordable housing. That was passed. Articles 14, 15, 16, and 17, and 18 were all, I'll take that back. Article 14 was to acquire property at 160 Forest Street and create a life estate in return for a loan that would allow the current owner to stay in there until his or her passing. That was approved. Articles 15, 16, 17, and 18 were all dealing with property at 22 Highland Ave, property that contains a brook and goes back to North Border Road. That property is right down near the intersection of Highland Ave and Forest Street. So our articles there were, we heard that the town wants to acquire that and allow and control the development because there was a proposed development proposal by a developer to place 24 units on that lot using 40B regulations for affordable housing. So the town wants to take that property and reduce it to 5 units, and also amending the zoning law or zoning map for this property to allow the construction because it is in conservation area, and also $30,000 to demolish the house, which is in very bad shape at 22 Highland Avenue. And all those articles were approved. The last article of the night, Article 19, was an appropriation of $75,000 to complete the work at the intersection of Johnson Road and Ridge Street, where there is a temporary traffic light in there. There's a grant to finish that off, add new sidewalks and turning lane to Johnson Road, and also a crosswalk at Coolidge Road across Ridge Street. The town needed to appropriate $75,000 to supplement that grant to get the work done. That was passed, so that concluded this town meeting for tonight. Town meeting will resume again with Article 20 on next Monday night. So we invite you to stay tuned for that. And we also remind you, if you're watching this live, that it's very slippery outside. Weather conditions are not good. Be very careful on your ride home if you're going anywhere or if you're going out, especially the commute tomorrow morning. We'll be careful going back too. So thank you for joining us. I'm Alan Iden for the crew here at WinCam. Thank you and good night.